New footage of an unidentified hump in Scotland's Loch Ness suggests that there might not be one, but possibly two long-necked creatures lurking in its depths. Now, does that mean that there are two different Loch Ness monsters? A September 2024 video captured from a webcam at Loch Bed and Breakfast on the loch's north shore showed a large wake moving south across the water with what appears to be a hump near the front. Now, a self-proclaimed Nessie hunter spotted this and said, "There are obviously two creatures taking up residence in this area of the loch at the moment." He added, "There was a long object that looked bumpy on top of the water, moving through the loch with a strong wake against the current. In the middle of the object, a pale hump-like part of some creature can be seen rising up throughout the length of the video clip. I was so captivated by the sighting," they said. Now, Nessie is supposedly about 8 to 10 feet long on the surface, but has more body or strong finds underneath in order to churn the water up with such force, the Loch Ness hunter said. He was certain that these were the Loch Ness monster and not any other type of animal. What type of creature has a reddish-brown hump in the middle of a bumpy length of body that can cause such disturbance and wake? It looked weird and strange, no resemblance to a seal or otter, he reasoned. No duck or bird could cause a wake like that with so much water disturbance. It might be heading back to hybrid giant eel territory, but it didn't move like an eel. I cannot really say it was any known animal, he said. So maybe this really is footage of the real Nessie. Now, it's been discovered that a drone captured footage of the elusive creature Nessie. A tourist paddling through Scotland's Loch Ness for a long-distance charity canoe trip may have inadvertently captured drone footage of the fabled Loch Ness monster. "The last thing I want to do is make a Nessie claim," Richard Maver told the Post. "I'm the most skeptical of people, but watching this, I think, yeah, there's something a bit strange here. It shows a long, thin form just beneath the water surface." Now, while paddling in the water, the tourist set the drone out to film, and as the camera zoomed in, the outline of a creature nearly twice the length of the beached 14-foot long watercraft appeared to approach the group while floating beneath the lake's rippling waves. And the shape captured by the camera bore an uncanny resemblance to a plesiosaur, a sea creature from the dinosaur-dominated Mosaic era that has long been associated with the elusive Nessie. Now, underwater footage could have just proved the existence of the Loch Ness monster. The Loch Ness Center has finished a huge search of Loch Ness. It took place last month, on May 22nd to the 25th, and saw hundreds of budding monster hunters scour the 23-mile-long loch for unusual activity, both in person and online. Now, for the first time, remotely operated vehicles were used in an attempt to capture the first underwater image of the famous beast. Now, this was accompanied by baited camera traps fitted with GoPro cameras and lights placed in strategic locations to capture any signs of wildlife. Now, they found some fish and some mysterious shadows. Now, could that have been Nessie? In 2021, on August 26, Benjamin Scanlon was on a holiday with his family and took a trip on the Nessie Hunter of Loch Ness cruises, trying to find the elusive creature. Now, he spotted something on the sonar on the boat and caught an image of something that looks like Nessie. Now, Captain Mike of the boat estimated the creature to be 3 to 4 meters in length at depths of about 20 meters, while the boat was in the water about 40 meters deep. So is this the first sonar image of Nessie? I think so. A man spotted the Loch Ness monster from his house through his webcam, so he made sure it was recording the elusive creature. Owen O'Feogan said he was left stunned by the sighting of the 20-foot monster in the Scottish Highlands and has even had his footage accepted by the official Loch Ness Monster Sightings Register. So yeah, people think this is the real deal. Now, at the time, he'd been watching the loch via webcam when he noticed a hump-like object at the right-hand side of the screen moving down the middle of the loch. He said at times it seemed to be higher out of the water and at times lower. It moved briskly with no visible wake, but the waters of the loch were not calm. I thought it was a most unusual sight. It neither plowed through the water like a boat with an engine nor sailed through. He added, "I do not think the hump is a seal. Certainly it's not the behavior of one. I think it could be Nessie," after exhausting all other possibilities. Now, he believes that the hump was around a kilometer from the camera, and it's estimated to be approximately 10 feet long and standing about 4 feet out of the water. Now, if this was Nessie, she was huge. On November 12, 1933, a man named Hugh Gray snapped the first known photograph of a creature lurking in the Loch Ness, aka the Loch Ness Monster. Now, he had taken his Labrador for a walk that day, and it is suspected that the photograph depicts his dog fetching a stick from the loch. But others have suggested that the photograph depicts an otter or a swan, and the original negative was lost, but this photo is one of the most famous pieces of proof that Nessie exists. The Dinsdale film from 1960 is another piece of proof that the Loch Ness Monster is real. Tim Dinsdale filmed what he believed to be a dark hump that left a wake crossing Loch Ness on April 23, 1960. He described it as mahogany red with a blotch on its side when viewed through binoculars. He said that when he mounted his camera, the object began to move, and he shot 40 feet of film. Now, after the film, Dinsdale continued to pursue finding the Loch Ness Monster, but while he claimed to have had additional sightings, he was unable to produce more photographic evidence. Now, in 1993, Discovery Communications produced a documentary, Loch Ness Discovered, with a digital enhancement of the Dinsdale film. A person who enhanced the film noticed a shadow in the negative that was not obvious in the developed film. Now, by enhancing the overlaying frames, he found what appeared to be the rear body of a creature underwater. Before I saw the film, I thought the Loch Ness Monster was a load of rubbish. Having done the enhancement, I'm not too sure, they said. Ian Bremmer was driving through the Highlands in search of deer to photograph when he came across a creature that resembled the infamous Nessie surfacing from the calm waters of Loch Ness. Now, he didn't notice the image of the three lumps peeking out from underwater until he got back to his home, and the image shows a serpent-like silver-brown creature swimming away from the camera. The front, middle, and back parts of the 2-meter monster emerged from the water as curved humps. I'd normally be a bit of a skeptic when it comes to Nessie, and I think it's just something for the tourists, but I'm starting to think there's something out there, the 58-year-old said to the Scotsman. When I saw it on my screen, I said, what the hell is that? If you're fishing there, it's sort of the place where you can get a tingle up your spine and second guess what you're seeing. Now, some of Bremmer's friends have suggested that the image is actually of 3 seals playing. I suppose it could be seals, but I'm not sure, he said. The more I think about it, the more I think it could be Nessie.
Cryptids are extremely elusive creatures, and when someone manages to get clear footage of one, I get excited. Clifford Lebrec claimed he'd been watching a creature for about 2.5 months on the outskirts of Des Moines, Iowa back in 1977, and over the years, there was only more and more sightings. So one night, Lebrec decided to fire at the creature. Allegedly, it was about 25 feet away from where he was parked in his pickup truck, and 2 creatures walked up from behind a hedge. One stopped, but the other went to a woodpile, bent down, and started to eat it with its back towards Lebrec. So he stayed in the car, waited for it to turn around, but it just kept on gnawing at the wood. So finally he decided to fire at it from behind, and when the animals turned and saw him, he got crazy buck fever and just couldn't do it. So as it came towards him, he couldn't really get the window rolled up fast enough. It was apparently really close, and Lebrec was obviously petrified with fear as the creature advanced. Allegedly, it loomed over the car, and it was about 8 feet tall. It reached through the window, grabbed Lebrec, and shook the daylights out of him. Yeah, it was a very strong creature. He could feel its face about 6 inches away, and to quote him, he was in a state of tremendous fear. He could feel his whole body shaking. He felt a sensation of being twisted around and pushed onto the floor. The creature was angry, obviously, because you tried to fire at it, and then our witness passed out. When they regained consciousness, it was gone. Lebrec, who owned a truck brokerage firm, is also president of Bigfoot Research Incorporated. He's been researching Bigfoot reports for about 49 years, and the thing that attacked him was terrifying and enormous. He said that after the attack, his memory was kind of vague because of his terror, since the thing was shaking him around, so he decided to visit a hypnotherapist, Eric Elster of Knoxville, Iowa, who was the expert in our situation. Elster stated that he hypnotized Lebrec so that he would go back to the time of the attack, and Lebrec was able to design and construct a life-size model of the creature based on the details that came to him under hypnosis, as well as what he obviously consciously remembers. So he made a model of fiberglass that was covered in artificial hair that allegedly represented a typical young adult male. The model stands about 7 foot 6 inches, and if it were a real creature, would weigh like 600 to 1,000 pounds, and its feet, of course, are what gives the creature its name. They're about 18 inches long, 9 inches wide, and they leave a flat impression of the ground, like 2 inches deep. Allegedly, Bigfoot's fur is dark brown in color, and it has a very foul smell. So on this model, the shoulders measure about 4 feet across, the arms, which are about 47 inches long, reach down to almost the creature's knees, its biceps, 27 inches around this fun area, and the massive neck has a circumference of 40 inches. According to our witness, Bigfoot can make a wide variety of sounds. It can mimic other animals, but its typical voice is a low guttural growl. But sometimes it can sound like a hooting owl or even a barking dog. Lebrec estimates that there may be as many as 5,000 Bigfoot creatures in the United States and more in Canada. And Lebrec believes that no remains are ever found of Bigfoots that have passed because they either bury or hide their dead. And during Lebrec's search for our elusive creature, he has investigated numerous reports of sightings. Allegedly, he searched for 15 years before finally meeting Bigfoot face to face. So this creature obviously exists, and it's thriving at great numbers and increasing all the time. Lebrec thinks that the Bigfoot is a very intelligent creature and tries very hard to avoid contact with humans. It's almost as if the beast has some form of primitive telepathy or instinct that warns it when a man is nearby. But despite the attack, Lebrec is still not afraid. He's like, I harvested what I sowed. It's like picking a fight and getting the heck knocked out of you. In November of 2009, Greg Warner and his team reported on and supplied photographs of a giant snake event near the jungle city of Iquitos in Peru. The photographs showed a trail at least 5 meters wide, and they also provided video evidence to support their photos and eyewitness accounts. So this creature is believed to be a yakumama, which is an enormous serpent believed to be the mother of all aquatic animals. According to legends, this creature would suck up any living thing that passed within 100 steps of it. So to protect themselves, local folks would blow on a conch horn before entering any body of water, believing that the creature would reveal itself if it was present. So the video we have for you today is in Spanish, but I managed to find a translation of what happens so we can dissect it. So in the human settlement 24 de Mayo, the dwellers got into a panic when they saw that on the enormous swamp located at the back part of the settlement, there was a huge silhouette of dragged grass and mud that was clearly visible, and they attributed the event to the creature. Although some folks were like, no, it's a gigantic boa and it just guards a small pond. Well, one eyewitness claimed it started to move like this, circulate until it found a way out over there. And you cannot say there is a channel over there, as you can see it was playing. And this is the trail that it made. Look, it looked like it wanted to get out that way, but turned over there. It took all this way, it took all this. If you keep walking that way, you can see it remained like this. But before, it was not like that. Look, this is clearly further evidence that the black boa, yakumama, sakamama, and minhokao are one and the same in terms of cryptid classification. All regular description and photographic evidence points to this conclusion, but that doesn't make it any less scary for those of us who are terrified of snakes. An interesting video has emerged from Mexico that shows what appears to be a small bipedal humanoid scurrying across a road. So this video was reportedly captured in January of 2024 by a security camera at a farm in the city of Monterey and subsequently offered online back in May. A dark form exited from a wooded area on the side of the road, then quickly made its way across the dirt path, and then it vanished back into the brush. Simpson style. Many believe it to be sightings of duende, a humanoid figure of folklore that is comparable to goblins, dwarves, gnomes, or even leprechauns. So what do you think it is? Fun fact, in Spanish, duende originated as a contraction of the phrase dueña de casa, effectively master of the house. Or it could also be derived from some similar mythical being of the Visigoth or Swabian culture, given its similar looks with the tomte of the Swedish language, which is depicted as a mischievous spirit inhabiting a dwelling. Turns out, Spanish folklore is rich in tales and legends about various types of duendes. Anjanas, buscosos, dianos, enanos, elfos, hadas, gnomos, núbaros, and many, many others. On April 2nd of 2024, TikTok influencer Nightmare Fuel uploaded a strange 1-minute video they had received from an unnamed fan. And in the comments they wrote, a camera was set up facing the river in Namorong after many people said they saw spirits in the river. And this is a river where many people have lost their lives over time. And the camera captured this, an unbelievable sight. And we have it for you. So some folks believe that they were referring to Lake Namor on Lolobau Island in Papua New Guinea. No date is given, though it's thought to have been fairly recent, and it's kind of unclear what exactly the creatures in the lake are, but they do appear to have large eyes that upon surfacing reflect the light. They swim about, submerge, emerge, and occasionally look at the camera. The activity seems fairly harmless, all things considered. YouTuber Maximum Fear featured the footage on his channel in a video titled Newest Disturbing Creatures Caught on Trail Cam 2024 and wrote, at some point we can even see the eyes on the creatures reflected. They just slowly swim around with their long, straggly hair covering most of their face and head, and their pale white skin is slightly seen beneath. So a lot of folks are like, what could this be? Because once again, the river has a dark past, and folks think they might be paranormal manifestations of the lives lost, or they could actually be the creatures that are responsible for a lot of the disappearances and deaths. Maybe the land is cursed, maybe these are some sort of weird evil entity. No thanks. And finally for today, we have a video from August 2014 that was taken near Port Renfrew in British Columbia, Canada, and according to the the witness transcript, it's something to see. Wendy and her husband were driving back from Port Renfrew, and there were a lot of creeks and streams flowing beside the road where they were driving, and Wendy suggested going for a little hike beside one of those streams. And while the duo were doing so, she's like, let's go further into the forest. She was feeling adventurous. So about 200 feet in, they spotted something ahead of them. And at first they were like, maybe it's a bear. But then they're like, no, it's a little more upright, kind of interesting looking, has a bit of a cone type head. So you watch the video, you decide. Allegedly there was kind of a musty smell in the air that wasn't strong, and the duo are adamant that this creature was not a bear. Move over, Bigfoot. The water leaper is a malicious creature from Welsh mythology and folklore that lived in swamps, ponds, rivers, and lakes. It was said to be a giant limbless frog or toad with a bat's membranous wings, sometimes even a bird's feathery wings, and a long reptilian tail with a large stinger at the very tip. So it leapt across the water using its wings, hence its name, and its favorite prey were fish, poor sheep who wandered too close to the water's edge, or even fishermen. And don't look at me, I don't fish. It was said that its appearance alone was enough to strike one dead. Never mind its venomous stinger or crazy screech that could have you doing this. This being was also said to really badly shriek. By the way, that shriek would stun its prey, and it would leap up from the water, it would snap the fishing line of fishermen, dragging whatever poor soul into the water's abyss, only to be speedily engulfed by a malignant and quite insatiable big mouth. Now, I don't know if there's been any modern sightings. It might be an extinct situation, maybe an endangered situation. Whatever it is, I'm not tempting fate. In Northern English folklore, the Barghest or Barhest is a mythical monstrous black dog with large teeth and claws, though in other cases the name can refer to a ghost or household elf, especially in Northumberland and Durham. So in terms of the origins of the name, ghost in Northern England was pronounced guest, and the origin is thought to be of the combination Burgest, town ghost. Others explain it as similar to the German Berggeist, mountain ghost, or the bear ghost. Another derivation is Bargeist, German for spirit of the funeral bier. So in Yorkshire, England, one notable case is said to frequent a remote gorge named Troller's Gill in the Yorkshire Dales. A ballad entitled The Legend of the Troller's Gill can actually be found in a historical book, and it has to do with all of this. The ballad recounts the tale of a man who ventures forth to the horrid gill of the limestone hill. I did say it was a song, right? In order to summon and confront the Barghest in an act of ritual magic. The man's lifeless body is discovered soon afterwards with inhuman marks upon his, chest. There is also a story of a Barghest entering the city of York occasionally, where, according to legend, it preys on lone travelers in the city's narrow snickleways. Furthermore, the building at number 1, the Shambles, is named Barghest. The town of Whitby is also associated with the spectre, and yet another one haunted an area of wasteland between Reghorn and Headingley Hill near Leeds. In Durham, during the 1870s, a shape-shifting Barghest was said to live near Darlington and was said to take the form of a headless man, who would vanish in flames, a headless lady, a white cat, a rabbit, a dog, or a black dog. Another was said to live in an uncanny-looking dale between Darlington and Houghton near Throstlenest. If I got it wrong, I'm sorry. The Barghest often allegedly serves as an omen of death. At the passing of a notable person, it may appear, followed by all the other dogs of the local area in a kind of funeral procession, heralding the person's death with howling and barking. Also, if you're gonna get in its way, it's gonna strike out with its paw, and you're gonna wind up with a wound that never heals. Besides taking the form of a large black dog with fiery eyes, it might also become invisible and or walk about with the sound of rattling chains. Oh, and it might foretell the death of an individual by laying across the threshold of their house. And like the vampire, they can't cross rivers. So, good to know. If your dog crosses the river, it's a dog. If not, get out of there. The Ogopogo legend has been spread for many generations, either directly from French settlers to Louisiana or via the French-Canadian immigrants centuries ago. Loup-garou represents a variant pronunciation and spelling of the original French loup-garou, which is the version I heard about when I was younger at summer camp. It was a fun French camp. According to Barry Jean Ancelet, an academic expert on Cajun folklore and professor at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette in America, the tale of the loup-garou is a common legend across French Louisiana. So both words, so loup-garou and loup-garou, are used interchangeably. Everybody's got their own preference. Just so we all don't get confused today, I'm just gonna stick with loup-garou for the purpose of the legend. So in the Cajun legends, the creature is said to prowl the swamps around Acadiana and greater New Orleans, specifically the sugarcane fields and woodlands of the region. legends. The Hugahu most often is described as a creature with a human body and the head of a wolf or dog, similar to a lot of modern werewolf legends, and often the storytelling has been used to inspire fear and obedience. One such example is stories that have been told by elders to persuade younger generations to behave. So according to another variation, the beast will hunt down and kill Catholics who do not follow the rules of Lent, and this coincides with the French Catholic loup-garou stories, according to which the method for turning into a werewolf is to break Lent 7 years in a row. For what it's worth, I've been ignoring Lent for much longer and I'm not a werewolf. I'm part vampire, not part wolf. Long story. Anyways, a part of the legend says that the Hugahu is under the spell for 101 days, and after that time the curse is transferred from person to person when the Hugahu draws another human's life source. During the day, the creature returns to human form, and although acting sickly, the human refrains from telling others of the situation for fear of being killed. Other stories range from the Hugahu as a rabbit to the Hugahu being derived from witchcraft. In the latter claim, only a witch can make a Hugahu, either by turning into a wolf herself or by cursing others. I don't want to be cursed. In the folklore of Lee County, South Carolina, the lizard man of Scape or Swamp, also known as the lizard man of Lee County, is an entity said to inhabit the swampland of the region. On July 14th of 1988, the sheriff's office investigated a report of a car that was damaged overnight while parked at a home in the area of Browntown, outside Bishopville, South Carolina, on the edges of the swamp. So the car reportedly had tooth marks and scratches, with hair and muddy footprints left behind. The sheriff at the time, one Liston Truesdale, noted that this was the start of various claims that eventually snowballed into a story about a lizard man in the swamp. Prompted by the news of the vehicle damage, local Christopher Davis reported to the sheriff that his car was damaged by a creature he described as green, wet-like, about 7 feet tall, had 3 fingers, red eyes, skin like a lizard, and snake-like scales. Oh, and it happened like 2 weeks prior. So according to Christopher, he was driving home from working the night shift at a fast food restaurant when his car got a flat tire. And after fixing it, he saw this creature walking towards him. He got in his car, began to drive, but then the creature was soon on top of the car. So Christopher hit the brakes and the creature rolled off, which gave Christopher enough time to escape. Well, coverage by newspapers and media resulted in really increased attention for the claims. Local businesses began selling Lizard Man t-shirts. The local Chamber of Commerce was like, okay, well, it's good for the community. Fast forward to 2009, CNN mentioned the Lizard Man legend in a story about a couple in Bishopville who reported damage to their vehicle, including traces of redness. 2015, local television station WCIV featured photos and videos claiming to be Lizard Man, allegedly taken by some unidentified individuals. 2017, the South Carolina Emergency Management Division sent out a humorous tweet being like, hey, just be careful during the solar eclipse, you might want to remain vigilant for Lizard Man. So looks like he's still creeping around. And the shug monkey is a mythical creature in the folklore of Cambridgeshire, sharing the features of a dog and a monkey, which reportedly haunt Slow Hill Lane, which leads from the village of West Ratting to nearby Balsham. So this creature, said to have the body of a jet black shaggy sheepdog and the face of a monkey with staring eyes, is not believed to be an escaped primate. But it's kind of terrifying. Local writer and broadcaster James Wentworth Day, who first related stories of the shug monkey in Here Are Ghosts and Witches, described it as a curious variation of black shug, while local folklorist Polly Howitt suggests that maybe there's some origins in Norse mythology here. Local police constable A. Taylor, who heard the stories, was like, yeah, it's a cross between a big dog and a monkey with big shining eyes. Sometimes it shuffles along on its hind legs, other times it whizzes past on all fours. Okay, well, if you see that, right? Ever thought you saw something glittering in the distance, but your eyes were deceiving you? Well, Stella's experience took place on September 2nd of 2022 back in Chicago. She went out onto a balcony and she was looking in the distance and saw this weird large tree. It was about like 20 feet away. And one of the branches on the tree was bowing pretty heavily, but there was nothing there that could have made sense for it to be having weight. So as Stella was staring at the branch and trying to make sense of what was going on, an intense feeling of dread and fear came over her, as if every part of her body was screaming at her to turn around and run, but she didn't know why. And at that very moment, the branch that she had been observing began to shake violently, and despite everything still screaming at her to leave, curiosity had now gotten the better of her. So she started to move along the railing to get a bit of a closer look. A small form began to glimmer on a branch, and as Stella continued to watch in shock, a transparent human figure that shimmered a yellowish-white color developed. She snapped out of her fixated stare and quickly took a step back from the railing, realizing finally that maybe this is something kind of scary. The shimmery being eventually dropped out of the tree, landing behind a man who happened to be walking past at the time. Now this guy spun around, his reaction similar to somebody who had been struck from behind, and was kind of confused when all he saw was a cloud of smoke. Oh right, the shimmery thing had disappeared in a puff of smoke after hitting the ground. Now Stella was like, okay, I'll wait around, let's see what happens. Nothing came back. Thankfully for her, at the same time, another neighbor just a couple floors below had observed exactly the same thing. And when those two conferred, they were like, okay, what's going on? Thankfully, they also managed to track down the guy that was walking past. And like between the three of them, they were like, okay, he felt something on his back. I saw something. You saw something. What is going on here? Oh, and they also all confirmed that they were feeling that weird, overwhelming dread. Up north we go next. We've got an aquatic cryptid in Vancouver. So Taylor Wallace is a private investigator based out of BC who was hired to find the evidence of a person that had gone missing without a trace. And all he found, after more than a 6-year investigation, was evidence of large clawed creatures that could very well be consuming people. The photos he has provided as proof show a large claw print in the sand that was found, among others, next to a seal without its head that he discovered in 2016, a large claw print cut into some solid stone found in 2022, a cave made by something with large claws that has a red fluid-soaked entrance with a red claw print on the cave wall above it, and 3 separate scat samples from a large animal, believed to be one of these mysterious creatures. Oh, and also what possibly could be a human fingernail? So the area where all of this was found in was a couple hundred feet around a lake from a public beach, and there were dozens and dozens of large claw marks coming out of the water and onto the shore in various places that really didn't belong to any kind of water creature that Taylor could identify. And he's gone to this beach many times and is constantly looking for and gathering more evidence. Sadly, he has found another seal that was missing an important body part, and copious amounts of evidence of a large aquatic creature that's coming out of the ocean on a daily basis to feed on seals, ducks, and migrating snow geese. So not only are there large digs and claw prints in the hard ground everywhere, which were obviously made by a creature with some crazy claws, but the remains of all these dead other creatures are everywhere. While coyotes are the largest predators in the area, Taylor's never seen one in that park, and also the claw prints don't match up in really bad evidence. In a nearby park, Taylor's also collected more scat samples, and also one that might have traces of human evidence. And he's like, maybe this is from the human that he's been looking for that's been missing, so he can stop looking for that human. Also, very coincidence-wise, he's found evidence of these creatures in locations where people have gone missing without a trace. Do you believe in fairies? Now, while most folks like to think of them like helpful beings with multicolored hair, stunning wings, the reality is not all sugar plums and sweetness. American soldier Sam Barrett comes from a long line of military personnel, if we're talking expertise. Currently deployed on a peacekeeping mission, so the location of the story is kind of anonymous for safety, but the current climate where he is always raining or foggy. For context. So one night earlier this year, while retrieving a cache of buried weapons, he and his platoon noticed some lights in the forest that were kind of far away. They were about like 10 small lights, all moving pretty erratically. Now another member of Sam's group began to hear what sounded like 2 people whispering in a language nobody could understand. And it was very quiet at first, but it started to get louder until it sounded like they were whispering right next to his ear. Soon, about 10 more voices joined in on the whispering, and they were all talking at the same time. The men began to panic. They were like, oh, maybe these lights are a distraction, which apparently that was a common tactic used by the local enemies. And they're like, uh-oh, ambush. So Caleb, a teammate and good friend of Sam's, suddenly started speaking loudly, which is not what you want to do in this situation. It seemed as though he was trying to communicate with his father, who had died 2 years earlier, and he dropped all of his belongings before running towards the lights. Now Sam was like, okay, my buddy's lost it, or maybe there's mind control going on. Now, fearing for Caleb and worrying like, yo, you're a dummy, you're gonna give up our position, he chased after him. But Caleb kept repeating, I'm coming, father, as he sprinted towards the lights. Well, as they got closer and the lights got bigger, Sam found it odd he couldn't really make out any definition, like there was nothing behind them. They just looked like lights floating in midair. Now Caleb was on his knees with his arms at his side. He was praying in front of these lights. And he was in like a trance, and Sam tried snapping him out of it, but he was like, nope, my father, the lights, the lights. Now, eventually the commander of the team showed up, looked at everything, and was like, uh-oh, the fairies have him. Caleb eventually passed out, and the lights disappeared almost instantly. After being carried back to the base and returning to consciousness, Caleb had zero recollection of what happened. And not just for the evening. The entire day was a blank. Terrifying. We can't have a cryptid list without Nessie. For the uninitiated, this is the preferred nickname of the Loch Ness monster over in Scotland. Spottings of this girlie go all the way back to 565 AD, making her a pretty grown woman at this time. Tied with Bigfoot for the most common cryptid being spotted, she's very popular, but also very much a recluse. This most recent spotting is from earlier this year, and in early March there was a Nessie enthusiast who couldn't believe what he saw when he was monitoring a webcam video of the lake from his home. Two separate clips captured something stirring in the mysterious depths close to shoreland lodges near Fort Augustus on the loch's southern shore. Now, our expert described that he almost couldn't believe what he was seeing. It all happened so fast. In the first video clip he got, something moved on the surface for a couple of seconds, and then he saw two shadowy wakes moving in two lines under the surface, moving to the left approximately 15 feet before disappearing. Now, the expert estimates that the wake was roughly 6 to 8 feet long, and the water was way too agitated for the disturbance to have been caused by a fish. This was the first confirmed sighting of Nessie in over 7 months, which kind of broke the drought of Nessie news. Hey, maybe she just wants to hibernate. Finally for today, a tale of the Matagami Bigfoot. So this tale begins about 20 years ago, when our anonymous narrator purchased property on the lake. It's a pretty common cottage and vacation spot. He had grown up spending summers in the area, and he's very knowledgeable about wildlife noises, which very important. It was about 9:15 at night, right when darkness was starting to take over. He and his wife were sitting by the fire, facing like all the woods on their property, and they were like, okay, let's go inside because mosquito bites were brutal. He was staring at the fire alone when he heard what he described as about like 3 whacks around a kilometer away, and didn't really think about it much until about 15 minutes later when he heard the sound again. But this time it was closer. Now, originally he was like, okay, maybe it's a moose hitting their antlers against a tree, but it didn't make sense for what time of year it was. Being able to barely see through the tree line, he heard the noise again. And yes, another 15 minutes. This time it was closer once again. He didn't really have anything to protect himself with, so he bolted into the cottage. And the whacks came again, even closer. Now, he never heard them once he got fully inside the house, but they kept happening at night over the next so many years. Now, if you're wondering, okay, maybe it's just somebody pulling a prank, his property is water access only, so any random strangers aren't going to come all that way for a prank. Michigan Dogman has been terrifying locals since at least 1887, when not one, but 2 lumberjacks shared their sighting of the creature. According to legend, this cryptid has a dog's head on a man's body, but it isn't a werewolf. It's the Dogman, who for most witnesses steps out of the trees in an isolated part of the woods, performs some acrobatic moves, and then tears off into the woods. It was described as a 7-foot-tall, blue-eyed, or amber-eyed, bipedal, canine-like animal with, yes, the torso of a man, but fearsome howls. But apparently they sound human. This creature was unknown to most of the modern world until very late in the 20th century. It is said to have been stalking the area around the Manistee River since the days when the Odawa tribes lived there. In 1937, in Paris, Michigan, not to be confused with Paris, Texas, or Paris, Canada, Robert Fortney was attacked by 5 wild dogs and said that one of the 5 walked on 2 legs. Flash forward to 2017, truck driver Joe Barger pulled over in the Dogman's territory in Manistee National Forest to fix a leaky tire. Well, I guess probably just a busted tire. According to Barger, he was under his vehicle fixing things up when he heard an unnatural animal call emanating from the woods. Assuming it came from a black bear, he fixed his thing, got in the vehicle, drove off, only to spot a giant wolf head in the open window of his very tall truck, keeping pace with the vehicle. Barger claimed the creature had huge white teeth with 3-inch long canines, long black ears, and huge, seemingly intelligent yellow eyes. After deciding the Dogman was kinda set on making him his next meal, Barger snagged his Colt and fired at the creature, blasting it into the weeds. Supposedly, the Dogman's body was gone when Barger turned around to check it out, and 2 people claimed they witnessed a bear fight where the body would have been. Going back a little bit of time, back in 1987, the legend of the Michigan Dogman gained popularity when a DJ at WTCM-FM recorded a song about the creature and its reported sightings. And he based the songs on actual reports. So this song was recorded with a keyboard backing and it was credited to Bob Farley. After the song was played on air, Cook received calls from listeners who said they'd had a lot of encounters. In the weeks after the song was first played, it was the most requested song on the station. Cook also sold cassettes of the songs for $4 and donated proceeds from the single to an animal shelter. Oh, before I forget, have you noticed anything in common with all these years? So according to legends, the Dogman appears in a 10-year cycle that falls on years ending in 7. And at the end of the day, sightings have been reported in several locations throughout Michigan, but primarily in the northwestern quadrant of the Lower Peninsula. So if you see a dogman, a lot of believers think that if you simply clap, you're gonna scare it away. So try that. Good luck. As the legend goes, locals of the village of Wynn in central Michigan claim a corn monster lurks in the cornfields. To be specific, a shadowy figure that looks like a large, disheveled man emerges from the stalks and scares anyone driving in the rural area late at night. It's located near the intersection of South Wind Road and West Blanchard Road in Fremont Township, Isabella County, which is about 12 miles southeast of Mount Pleasant. There was allegedly an encounter in 2003 from a delivery man who stopped on a country road near Wynn one night to just rest. The driver admitted that he occasionally felt before that night that there was something trying to reach out of the corner of his truck whenever he would drive down that road, but that night, things got different. He got out of his truck, wanted to just stretch his legs, and the next thing he knew, a frightening human-like creature appeared on the edge of the cornfield. He described this creature as unexplainable, dark, dirty, man-like, and our guy screamed, scrambled back into the vehicle, and drove off, passing by the thing as it stared at him until he was out of sight. As a matter of fact, the area in which the wind corn monster has been seen is very, very little. Nearly every encounter has been on that road, so Co Road, in Isabella County. It's interesting though, like to think about why this creature decided to stay in such a small area, and how it remains so elusive. Also, like, what's gonna happen if they plant something other than corn in those fields? Does it become the soybean monster, the wheat monster, the cabbage monster? Those are also shorter crops, so then our monster's gonna have to crawl. Also, where does he go when the corn is harvested? Does he have like a cabin in the nearby woods? Scary movies and stories have taught, well, me enough at least, that if there's a scary cornfield, don't go near it. So what other residents have experienced this creature? Like, because there's gotta be some. Maybe it's time to take a trip. If you try to find out more about this legend, by the way, be aware that a lot of the online sites spell the town as W-Y-N-N, but the correct spelling, according to maps at least and the town welcome sign, is W-I-N-N. The wahila is said to be a wolf-like creature the size of a bear that roams northern Michigan, Canada, and Alaska. It doesn't travel in groups, it's very solitary, likely due to its massive size and lack of local predators. So it's larger and more heavily built than normal wolves, with a wide head and proportionally larger feet and long, pure white fur. The animal's hind legs are said to be shorter than the front legs, and the tracks show widely spaced toes. Witnesses describe this as being 3.5 feet to 4 feet at the shoulder. Legends describe the wahila as an evil spirit with supernatural powers and describe it as doing what? Just killing people and removing their heads. It has been theorized that the wahila is an amphicyonid, which is a prehistoric carnivore of the Miocene era, or a dire wolf, a prehistoric hyena, or maybe even a completely new species of canine. The wahila supposedly travels through a section of land called the Nahanni Valley on its way to and from Alaska. The area is also known as Headless Valley due to the large number of headless corpses found in it, all attributed to the wahila. The snow-white creature allegedly travels silently on its massive paws and simply chomps the head of any unfortunate person it encounters on its way. According to an old Lowe legend, a ferocious hyena-like animal once roamed the American prairies. And due to its habit of killing and devouring dogs, the Lowe called this creature the Shunka Warakin, which translates to carrying off dogs. Every night this creature snuck into Lowe camps, and every morning a couple more dogs were found missing. So when the folks figured out that this had gone on long enough, they decided to ambush the animal. Armed with muskets and bows and arrows, they crouched in the darkness beside their teepees, not far from where the dogs were tethered. Suddenly, a strange wolf-like creature slinked into camp from out of the darkness. Nobody had ever really seen anything like it before. The very brave folks sprang from their hiding places and peppered the animal with arrows and musket balls. Incredibly, the missiles failed to bring the creature down, and they only made it angry. With a crazy shriek, the animal lunged at its tormentors. The warriors drove it back with their spears and clubs, and after a tremendous struggle, the animal retreated back into darkness. And everybody was like, let's follow it. They tracked the creature throughout the night and most of the following day, and eventually they did manage to corner it. The creature put up a very good last stand and fought to the bitter end. When it finally fell, it cried, just like a human being. Once the creature was dead, a lot of folks skinned its carcass, painted its hide, and placed it in a medicine bundle. It was under the belief that whoever wore this medicine bundle in battle would be immune to enemy weapons, much like the monster whose skin it contained. The Nain Rouge, or Red Dwarf, is more than a cryptid to the city of Detroit. It's a devilish embodiment of the hardships that have befallen the city throughout its existence. According to legend, before every disaster in the city, the Red Dwarf makes an appearance to foretell the upcoming hardship. The first sighting of the Demon of the Strait occurred in 1701, when Antoine de la Motte Cadillac, founder of Detroit, allegedly saw the being sitting on a bench. When the dwarf poked a stick at Cadillac, he retaliated with a drawn sword and nailed his adversary into retreat. As a result, Cadillac lost all of his money and moved back to France. Every hardship that befell Detroit from that moment forward came with an alleged sighting of the dwarf, sometimes climbing light poles disguised as a little human. Immediately before the catastrophic events, it's been spotted before riots, snowstorms, big battles, and a lot of other events. And finally for today, Dowagiac is the town in which reputable sources have supposedly spotted the odd Dewey Lake monster ever since the 1960s. These sources claimed a beast resembling a gorilla, bear, and cat mixed together, measuring 10 feet tall and covered with fur, has chased after multiple residents. In June of 1964, a woman claimed the 500-pound cryptid chased her into her home, and 3 more girls said they encountered it later that night on a wooded roadway. Multiple armed locals are said to have combed the woods looking for the monster who frightened the girls and the woman, but they found nothing. Some say the large creature is also armed with claws and scales, allowing it to swim in its namesake lake. So perhaps the monster is just living up to its name and hiding beneath the surface of water until it can roam the woods again. Or maybe it's taking a page out of Nessie's book. Number 5, Bigfoot or the Devil. Our first account for the day comes from scientist Jim Brittle and his cousin and takes place near Johnson City, Tennessee. Granted, every story I'll be recounting today comes from scientists, so I suppose I won't have to state that every time, but I wanted to make sure, that I made it clear from the get-go. So Jim and his cousin were out hunting, as one does, and found themselves sitting on the side of the wall of a rather large hollow, which consisted of very thick underbrush and lots of evergreen trees in a valley that led first to a clearing and then onto a supposed old graveyard. If I've said it once, I've said it a million times, don't mess around near graveyards, but here goes nothing. All of a sudden the duo heard the brush in the hollow below rattling and could tell that whatever was making the sounds was rather large. Jim had a firearm with him for safety, and using the night vision scope, he managed to make out what appeared to be a man at first, but he soon realized that the man was a creature about 7 to 8 feet tall, 450 pounds, covered in thick black fur with long tapered horns pointing straight up from either side of its head. Now, by this point, Jim and his cousin were terrified, so he fired off his weapon repeatedly before retreating into a nearby cabin. The next morning, all the two could find were a bucket load of spent shell casings and holes in a walnut tree. Nearby animal traps had been sprung and all the bait was gone. On a nearby ridge, the men located a series of tunnels made up of brush and various sizes of tree limbs, vines, and leaves, and pondered if it could be the beast's lair. But they didn't feel like tempting fate again to find out. They quickly returned home and never went into that area again, and thank goodness for that. Number 4, Mothman. Time to travel over to Waterville, Maine in late summer of 1971, where even I can't wrap my head around what happened. Dr. Sally Daniels was newly married and living in Killeen, Texas in a small duplex with her husband who was in the army. One night he was off duty while Sally was home alone in bed, and around 3 a.m. in the morning, otherwise known as witching hour, she woke up and saw a black figure standing at the bottom of her bed. She described it as 8 or 9 feet tall with huge big black wings and red eyes. Now, like any rational person, she tried closing her eyes and going back to sleep, or pretending it wasn't happening, but when she opened them again, the creature had moved to the right side of her bed. Sally was now frozen in fear, unable to scream, and darted under her blankets in a state of panic until the creature left. left. Shortly after this event, Sally moved to Maine because she was way too frightened to ever stay alone at night when her husband had duty. She had mentioned to her mom about seeing that huge black angel, and the mom was glad Sally came home as that didn't sound good. At the time she had never heard of the Mothman, but a few years later she came across an article and a drawing of one, finally giving her an answer as to what she saw that fateful night. Number 3. More Bigfoot. So now we travel over to southeast Oklahoma with a tale from Susan Paulson. It was just another day, and she was checking on the animals when the weather radio blared out a tornado warning. So at the time there was a large storm over the area, and an advisory was indeed in effect. So while she wasn't surprised, Susan quickly closed up the barn door and hurried towards the house, finding her offspring and husband. They got themselves into a shelter, barred the metal door, and sat waiting for the worst. About 5 minutes after they settled into the dugout, the wind started picking up outside, and the whole family could hear thunder and rain outside of the doors. It was soon joined by the impacts of large hail hitting the metal door as the sound of the wind changed to a roar similar to a plane about to take off. They could hear the different sounds of objects hitting the door, but particularly a loud crack and lots of scraping on the door. In total, the entire event lasted maybe 7 minutes, but the family didn't try to leave the dugout until the wind died down, which, it makes sense. Susan's husband unbarred the door and tried opening it, but it would only open about an inch. They could see through the crack that the apple tree next to the dugout had blown over in front of the door. And heck, they tried to pry the door open every which way, slamming their bodies against the door, but nothing worked. The family was completely stuck in the shelter, but they knew at some point there would be people checking on places in the tornado's path, so they stuck a piece of wood in the crack of the door to hold it open, and got comfortable and prepared to wait. When 7 p.m. rolled around, they discovered that claustrophobia and panic attacks can strike anyone, no matter how prepared you are. So technically the family was safe and prepared physically for a week, but Susan's not sure their minds could have lasted a week. They could see it was dark through the crack of the door when a foul odor wafted in, smelling like a wet dog combined with a male goat and a teenager's armpits. Now Susan originally thought it was an overly pungent skunk, and she went to shut the door, but stopped when she heard what sounded like footsteps. The family started yelling for help, calling out to whoever was out there, but nobody responded. There was a shuffling sound, and the smell got even stronger, causing Susan's eyes to water as she yelled out and pounded on the door. She heard a grunt before the sound of footsteps, and the odor started fading away. Eventually the footsteps returned, and while everyone trapped, yelled and pounded on the door, once again there was no response, and the footsteps left once more. This time Susan felt uneasy and barred the door shut. Something just wasn't right with this person. At around 3 in the morning, are we sensing a pattern? Susan's daughter woke up from a nightmare and started crying, and Susan was comforting her when she heard branches cracking and scraping against the door along with grunting. She woke her husband up, and once again, they pounded on the door and yelled, this time leaving the door open as much as possible. Just a couple of inches, man. When the noises outside stopped, they waited about 10 minutes to try to open the door, and this time it opened enough for the family to be able to step out. The trunk of the tree was lying near the door, but there was a pile of branches off to the side, and in that ground outside, there were a lot of footprints bigger than any foot Susan had ever seen. After tucking the offspring in their proper beds, Susan headed out to the barn to see if the animals were okay, and was about halfway there when she heard one of their hogs screaming. She ran towards the barn, and a few yards away, she could see her market-ready Hampshire barrow struggling and screaming while slung over the shoulder of a dark, hulking, human-like figure. Susan yelled at the figure to drop her peg, and it just turned and stared. She shined her flashlight at the creature's face, revealing a grayish face with a flat-looking nose. It was covered with thin, dark brown hair all over its body and massive feet. After a few seconds, it turned and walked into the cornfield towards the creek and disappeared from view. Yay for saving everyone, but bummer about losing the livestock. Number 2, a glimmer man in Chicago. So Stella's experience took place on September 2nd of 2022 after a day of running errands for her elderly father, when she returned to his apartment building and 6th-floor residence. She went out onto the balcony for, smoke break, just standing and allowing her mind to go blank when she noticed a weird large tree about 20 feet away. Yeah, I'll elaborate. So one of the branches on the tree was bowing quite heavily, but Stella couldn't see anything on it that could be responsible for the weighing down. As she was staring at the branch and trying to make sense of what her eyes were seeing, an intense feeling of dread and fear came over her, as if every part of her body was screaming at her to turn around and run, but she didn't know why. At this very moment, the bowing branch that she had just been observing began to shake violently, and despite her internal instincts still screaming at Stella to leave, curiosity had now gotten the better of her, and she started to move along the railing to get a closer look. As your friendly narrator, this is where I interject and tell anyone with some sense to run, but hey, what do I know? A small form began to glimmer on the branch, and as Stella continued to watch in shock, a transparent human figure that shimmered a yellowish-white color developed. She snapped out of her fixated stare and quickly took a step back from the railing, realizing finally that this is something that should be feared. Glad the old common sense kicked in after the overwhelming fear, dread, and visual, should have kicked in sooner in my opinion, but that's just my usual snark kicking in. The shimmery being eventually dropped out of the tree, landing behind a man who happened to be walking past at the time. The walking man spun around, his reaction similar to, as if he had been hit with an object from behind and was confused when all he saw was a cloud of smoke. The shimmering man had disappeared in said puff of smoke almost instantly after it hit the ground. Stella waited for some time expecting to see this thing re-emerge, but it was completely gone. At the same time, another neighbor just a few floors below Stella and her dad had also observed exactly the same thing as her and managed to confirm all the same details. The neighbor and Stella then managed to track down the man who was walking past a few hours later, and after a conversation, confirms that he had felt the weird impact, the overwhelming dread, but didn't see anything. Stella is positive that the Glimmer Man still roams the area, often feeling the overwhelming emotions from the day whenever she visits her dad, but hasn't spotted it since. My heart goes out to her, and I hope whatever it is buggers off soon. Number 1, not deer. I gotta say, I was definitely chuckling a bit at first when I was reading about this cryptid, but seeing as where I'm from, that's just another way to lead into conversation about seeing a moose on the highway. And while the thought of driving with an eyesight of a moose is scary enough, not deer are actually scarier. So this report comes from Elias Merritt in Roanoke, Virginia. Describing the time of day as almost dark, he was waiting for a friend to meet him for dinner when he experienced a feeling of something or someone watching him. He turned around suddenly and saw what he described as the shadow of a man behind a bush, which caused him to flee to the other side of the street, hiding in an area where he felt safer but could still see, if his friend was coming. As he stood in this new position, Elias saw 2 deer along the edge of the woods and watched them as they moved, observing that one of the deer seemed to have a bad back leg or was just injured. He walked in their direction to get a better look and see if he could help, but as he got closer, he realized they weren't deer and froze, petrified. The beings had oddly shaped heads and appeared to have patches of hair stitched over human skin. Both of the creatures looked in the direction of Elias and slowly stood up on their back legs and began running towards him, chasing him to the point where he was simply running and yelling in the direction of who knows what, no longer worried about waiting for his friend. He eventually ran into said friend and in a panic told him the entire story. And what do you know? The friend turned pale and explained that several years prior, he had had a similar experience while hunting in the forest outside of town, with his descriptions of the creatures being almost identical to what Elias had seen. Not to sound like a broken record, but I'm really glad I've never been like the nature hiking type.
Number 5, Bigfoot. It feels a little strange trying to say anything about Bigfoot because, he's like the most easily recognizable and cited cryptid in North America and maybe all over the world. I find it very interesting how many cultures across the globe have a variation on a giant bipedal ape-like creature. There's the Yeti of the Himalayas, the Australians have the Yowie, and I'm pretty sure about a dozen others. It's a very ancient cryptid, with its origins being difficult to trace back. It's one of our oldest stories as a people, actually. Some of the earliest stories ever come from indigenous tribes telling these stories of giant, hairy, bipedal creatures that would live in the forest. If you've ever wondered where the name Sasquatch comes from, it's an anglicization of Sasquatch, a shape-shifting creature originating from the Sitsails people of Vancouver, described as being a giant ape-like creature that could take the shape of different creatures. Which I guess would kind of explain how the thing is so good at hiding if it's always turning into something else when we're trying to get footage of it. Now, the term Bigfoot came about sometime in the 1950s. Jerry Crew was a lumberjack working in Humboldt County when he discovered a set of large 16-inch footprints sunk deep within the mud of the Six Rivers forest where he was working at the time. He told his coworkers about this odd occurrence, with many of them claiming that they'd seen similar tracks on previous sites, reporting too of various things they couldn't explain, like a 450-pound oil drum going missing in the middle of the night. You know how often that happens, you look one way and then your 450-pound drum is gone. The men gave a name to this mystery creature that they perceived was harassing them and called it Bigfoot on, account of the big feet. Sometimes the origin is exactly what you think it's going to be. From here, once a local paper picked it up, the story of Bigfoot spread across the country, referencing this mystery creature leaving tracks in California. It was this, combined with the famous footage in 1972, that cemented Bigfoot as a cryptid with staying power. Now, I'm referring to the Patterson-Gimlin film, named after the filmmakers. You've definitely seen it if you're interested in cryptids at all. It's less than 50 seconds, and it's some of the most famous cryptid footage of all time. It's a very short clip. Everyone recognizes that classic Bigfoot walk. To date, it's never been officially debunked, and the men who recorded the capture went to their graves insisting there was no hoax present. Now, the existence of Bigfoot is still hotly debated, and honestly probably will be forever unless we ever get some concrete proof, unless Bigfoot ever comes out and holds a press conference. Wherever he is or wherever they are, I hope Sasquatches, Yetis, Yowies, Big Feet, I hope they're chillin'. Probably annoying dealing with paparazzi all the time, and you know what? Let them live in peace. If they want to come to us, they'll come to us. And while you're waiting for that Bigfoot press conference to happen, if you're looking for more cryptid content, Top 5 Scary's the place to be. We've got all of that and then some. If cryptids aren't your jam, we got aliens, conspiracies, true crime, fake crime, basically anything scary under the sun and above it. So stay subscribed, don't miss a single scream, but do that after this video, okay? Wait till the credits. Alright, moving on. Number 4, Thunderbird. Our next critter is gonna be the Thunderbird. Nope, nothing to do with the sick classic car, although it's a mean ride. The Thunderbird is a creature that appears across many cultures, mostly indigenous groups alongside the Pacific Coast and Great Lakes area, all telling similar stories of these enormous, larger-than-life birds of prey. Now, these vary anywhere from stories of, just like a really big bird that would be scary, or sometimes Thunderbirds are more mythical, capable of impressive powers like thunder striking when they flap their wings, which is why they're called Thunderbird. Thunderbird, Bigfoot, sometimes the name of a cryptid really informs what they do. Tribes would tell stories about Thunderbirds to explain natural occurrences like storms or changes in weather or drought, famine, all those things. It's much easier to blame your problems on a big bird than anything else. Now, although they were thought to be dangerous, Thunderbirds were also seen as a benevolent nature spirit, and they would assist the tribe sometimes in searching of food during periods of famine. So they're not all bad, it's a Thunderbird to Thunderbird case basis. Now, it wouldn't be a good cryptid list unless we had a few sightings instead of just stories. So, we're gonna talk about one incident in particular with the Thunderbird, the 1977 Lawndale incident. This occurred when a young boy, one Marlon Lowe, was playing outside when he was attacked by 2 large birds, one of which allegedly began to carry the boy away, until the boy's mother ran to his rescue. Eyewitnesses who'd seen the incident taking place claimed the birds were 4.5 feet long with a wingspan of 10 feet, which is pretty incredible. A 6-inch hooked bill, 3 sharp claws, and a large black body, not really resembling any local birds. So what was it? Thunderbird coming down to soup up prey? Real life Pokemon? Sounds a bit like a starling. Also, a big shout out to that kid's mom. Imagine that power dynamic. Anytime he's acting up, you can remind him of the time you saved him from getting eaten by a giant bird. Oh, that'll get him mowing the lawn for sure. Number 3, Korakamwi. One of my favorite genres of cryptid or mythical creature is just a regular animal, but big. I mean, that's what the Thunderbird was. Maybe that's evident because the last 2 creatures that I spoke of on this list was a big ape and a big bird, respectively. Can we keep that trend going? Of course. Now, this list has been a little North American centric so far, so our next entry is going to be the Korakamwi, a Japanese cryptid that is basically just a giant octopus. They don't all have to have powers, they don't all have to be complicated, sometimes you can summarize them just like that. It's sort of like the Japanese equivalent to the Kraken, the other really big name in the giant octopi scene. The Korakamwi is a giant octopus god that is said to reside in Hokkaido's Uchira Bay. It's said to be big enough to swallow a ship whole. Its crimson body turns the sky and water red when it swims through. Old fishermen used to tell stories that when the seas or skies would turn red, that meant the Korakamwi was there and you should just avoid that general area. The fishing's gonna be no good. You're gonna get eaten by a giant octopus. Now, the origin of this legend is the best part of this cryptid. He's got some great lore. The legends state that near the mountains near the village of Rubungi, there lived a gigantic spider by the name of Yaushikep. His gigantic red body stretched over the mountains. One day, he descended, he was feeling frisky, and attacked the people in the village of Rubungi. He shook the earth as he walked, destroying everything in his path. Now, the villagers were terrified of him because he's a giant spider, and prayed to their gods to save him. The god of the sea, Repunkami, heard the prayers and pulled the giant spider into the sea, where its body was contorted and twisted into the shape of the Korakamwi, the monstrous octopus. Started as a spider, ended as an octopus. That's an icky way to live. That guy's just always been icky. Number 2, Bunyip. Coming in at the number 2 spot for today is gonna be the Bunyip, which from the name alone, you might be forgiven for thinking it sounds kinda cute. You close your eyes, Bunyip. That almost sounds like it's wanting to be an adorable little rabbit Pokemon or something. If only. Also, there's a lot of Pokemon references in this video. I got it on the brain, clearly. Gotta catch them all. I think I'm just sad because Ash and Pikachu retired. Anyway, the Bunyip is a creature from Aboriginal Australian folklore. Its name literally means devil or evil spirit, translated from the Wemba Wemba language. The Bunyip is an aquatic predator with many varying descriptions. Sometimes it's described as kinda looking like a hippo, sometimes it looks like a cross between like a cat dog, and sometimes it's just an incomprehensible scary snake snake-like twisty monster thing. All that's common across all of these depictions is that it's a scary thing that lives in the water. Over the years, there have been a number of reported sightings or findings of mysterious bones in southern Australia that led early settlers and colonists to believe that the bunyip was a new creature out waiting to be discovered. It inhabits swamps, rivers, and lakes, lurking for prey. Now, the first recorded sighting of it by Australian settlers can be traced back to 1851, when a tracing of the creature's body was discovered near a riverbank in Ararat, Victoria. Local hunters had speared an unknown beast and made an imprint of the creature's body to remember it by, because, you know, if you found something weird, you'd want to remember it. They described it as 11 paces long and 4 paces wide in an extreme depth. Now, sadly, this outline no longer exists. They didn't use permanent marker, but it was enough to spur an interest and a hunt for this possibly mythical, possibly real creature. The bunyip seems like it could have been a real strange step in aquatic evolution. Could not even begin to guess what it was really, or whatever it was they had found that day, so probably just safe for us to assume that it was a cryptid and there could be more bunyip out there lurking and waiting. And number 1, Ogopogo. Coming in at the number 1 spot is going to be a local favorite of ours, Canada's very own Ogopogo. Yes, I'm a little biased. I had to include a local cryptid at the end of this one. Much like Bigfoot, almost every culture's folklore includes some variant of a sea monster. The most famous among them is probably the Loch Ness monster, the fabled plesiosaur that lives deep beneath Loch Ness in Scotland. Ogopogo is kind of like the Canadian version of that. Ogopogo chills up in Kelowna, British Columbia, and is tied deeply to the native folklore surrounding this area. The Okanagan natives revered a creature they called the Nataika, or Nahatik, which translates to a few things, but all come out meaning roughly the same thing, you know? Water demon, water god, sacred creature of the water. If you're not getting this across, important thing that's wet. Nataika was a demanding lake god, and it was thought that in order to ensure safe passage, locals would have to sacrifice a small animal, a pig, a chicken, and others, into the lake to appease the hungry lake monster. The threat of a lake monster dragging victims to the bottom really kept people in line. Now, it should be worth noting that there is some good evidence and a bit of pushback from native groups to suggest that the demonic view of the lake spirit actually came from European settlers, and that to the Okanagan people, the Nahatiko was a fairly benign spirit that actually protected the valley and was kind of a cool guy. Now, all those names, where does it eventually become Ogopogo? The rather silly sounding name sounds more like it's a toy. Well, a children's song from the 1930s was the first place to ever refer to this sea creature as Ogopogo, describing it in the lyrics as, his mother was an earwig, father was a whale, a little bit of head, hardly in a tail, and Ogopogo was his name. That's as much singing as you're ever getting out of me. Over the years, much like Nessie, there have been numerous possible sightings of Ogopogo seeing something strange in the water that can't always be easily explained. Many people believe that Ogopogo could be like an otter or a seal or something that's always getting misattributed, but the legend is very much alive. Ogopogo has become a bit of a mascot for the city of Kelowna, with the statue of it serving as a popular photo op for tourists. So please, if you're ever in the area, snap a pic with Ogopogo. He loves it, he loves the press, and you don't even have to sacrifice a chicken to him anymore.
Number 5. The Jersey Devil. Since the 19th century, New Jersey citizens have been putting up with a devilish cryptid whose name describes him to a T, the Jersey Devil. The Jersey Devil is described as a kangaroo-like creature with the head of a dog, face of a horse, bat-like wings, horns on its head, and a tail. The Jersey Devil has been terrorizing people for hundreds of years, and there have been a multitude of reported sightings which helped create the creature's reputation. While visiting a mill to inspect his cannonballs being forged, Stephen Decatur launched a cannon at a flying animal overhead. The animal hardly flinched and continued on flying. People often complained of the devil eating their livestock and leaving the animals in ghastly states. One man was actually able to demobilize the creature, thinking it dead, and took a picture. He showed it to dozens of people in the hope that someone would be able to identify the creature with red eyes, and many claimed that it resembled the Jersey Devil. In January of 1909, there was a drastic influx in published sightings. Newspapers wrote of the devil attacking trolley cars and social clubs. The authorities supposedly fired at the creature in an attempt to stop the attacks, but to no avail. Reports of footprints in the snow were coming in from all over the state. Many even offered thousands of dollars for the capture of the Jersey Devil, with the plans to make a private enclosure, or zoo, for the cryptid. Skeptics believe that the Jersey Devil is nothing more than a folk story, saying that the devil was created by the early settlers who were collectively suffering from mass hysteria. Many people have been found faking their claims of sighting the Jersey Devil, and even faking tracks or photographs in an effort to substantiate their claims. Whether the Jersey Devil is real or not, it has definitely become extremely well known and feared as a North American cryptid. Number 4, the Skunk Ape. The Skunk Ape is described as a large bipedal creature standing at 5 to 7 feet tall and covered completely in reddish-brown hair. The Skunk Ape has been reported to live in swamps of Florida. Sightings of the cryptid began in the early to mid-1900s, with the first major sighting occurring when a group of people noticed a large, man-like creature in the Perky Bat Tower. The creature shook the tower, driving the bats away, and it escaped into the woods itself shortly after. In the 70s, 2 Florida deputies reported firing at the creature after it had stalked them through the woods. The deputies followed the uncanny tracks, finding reddish-brown hair that had been snagged in barbed wire. Many Everglades tour guides have reported sightings. In the summer of 1997, David Shealy noticed an animal trap filled with lima beans. David Shealy noticed an animal trap filled with lima beans had large prints on the ground surrounding it. David Shealy soon set up other traps filled with the beans, and many people who explored the swamps reported similar sightings to his. In 2000, the county sheriff's office received a photo of a large, hairy, man-like creature. The person who had sent the photo claimed to be an elderly woman who had seen the creature stealing apples off her porch. She scared it off with her camera, fearing that the creature was an escaped orangutan that might harm her or her family. Sightings are still reported today. 48 out of 67 counties in Florida have made a report since 2010. Those in search for a rational explanation of the creature have accused the entire mystery surrounding the creature as a hoax, saying that the skunk ape is nothing more than a myth and a knockoff Bigfoot. Some say that sightings were just people mistaking other wild animals for it, like sick bears or wolves. Bigfoot's small, swampy cousin has definitely stirred up some serious drama in the South. Number 3, the Wendigo. The Wendigo is a humanoid creature or spirit originating from First Nations and Indigenous people from the southeastern forests of Canada and the Great Plains of the US. The Wendigo is said to be a malevolent spirit, appearing at times as a creature with human-ish characteristics, capable of possessing humans. The possession invokes feelings of insatiable hunger, greed, and even the desire to consume human flesh. The Wendigo has several descriptions. Depending on the region, it may differ slightly. The Wendigo has been said to have a heart of ice, a foul stench, and a sudden chill when the creature's presence is near. However, in the original indigenous depictions of the creature, these features were not mentioned. The Wendigo was introduced by Algonquin-speaking indigenous people, including the Ojibwe, the Saulteaux, the Cree, the Nespaki, and the Innu. In all of their descriptions, the Wendigo is consistently described as a malevolent, flesh-eating, supernatural being, strongly associated with winter, coldness, famine, starvation, and the north. Basil H. Johnson, an Ojibwe scholar, provided a description of the Wendigo. The Wendigo was gaunt to the point of emaciation, its desiccated skin pulled tightly over its bones, with its bones pushing out against its skin, its complexion the ash gray of death, and its eyes pushed back deep into their sockets. The Wendigo looked like a gaunt skeleton recently disinterred from the grave. What lips it had were tattered and unclean and suffering from separation of the flesh. The Wendigo gave off a strange and eerie odor of decay and decomposition, of death and corruption. The Wendigo has also been reported to cause psychosis in humans, usually resulting in the ending of their lives. When near to starvation, the Wendigo will possess a human, which leads the human to act in strange and scary ways. The human will slowly stop seeing those around them as peers, and instead, the possessed may view their peers as food. The lives of people who have been possessed are often ended to ensure that no one gets eaten. The Wendigo has also been viewed as a concept, opposed to a physical being, displaying the innate nature of greed, selfishness, and consumption that lays inside us all. In pop culture, the Wendigo has been depicted in many different ways, but all depictions were derived from Indigenous and First Nations people, which has in turn shone a lot of false and over-dramatized information over the Wendigo's origin. Number 2, the Yeti. Yeti, abominable snowman, snowy Bigfoot, all names for the ape-like, snow-dwelling creature that lives in the northern reaches of North America. The Yeti is described as a large bipedal creature with white, gray, or brown hair. It has also been depicted as having large, sharp teeth. The name Abominable Snowman was created in 1921 when Charles Howard Berry led a Mount Everest expedition. He wrote of seeing footprints in the snow. Describing them, he said, he believed they were probably caused by a large, loping gray wolf, which, in the soft snow, formed double tracks rather like those of a barefooted man. His Sherpa guides gave the creature the name of Meto Kongmi, which roughly translates to man-bear snowman. The name Abominable came out of a mistake that interviewer Henry Newman made. In preparation for an interview with Charles Howard Berry, Newman assumed that the word Meto, man-bear, meant filthy, which he substituted abominable for. The name caught on quickly, and many called the creation of it a happy accident. Mentions and sightings of the Yeti extend back to before the 19th century. According to H. Seeger, the Yeti was part of many pre-Buddhist beliefs of Himalayan people. Seeger was told that Himalayan people used to view a glacier being as the god of the hunt. The Yeti has become an extremely popular creature. Filled with many mistakes and misunderstandings, the Yeti has a rich and slightly amusing history. Many movies have been made about Yetis, and people still travel to the northern reaches of the world in an attempt to capture proof of the Yeti's existence. Number 1. The Loveland Frog. And finally, I saved the absolute best for last, the Loveland Frog Man. The Loveland Frog, or Loveland Frog Man, finds its origin in Ohio. Standing on 2 feet at 4 feet tall, the frog is definitely much larger than the average amphibian. The Loveland Frog was first spotted in 1955. Some stories specifying that it was first spotted in May of 1955, when a businessman spotted the creature while driving on a dark road in Loveland, Ohio. Other stories say that a group of men spotted 2 or 3 creatures, each standing on 2 legs 3 to 4 feet tall, with frog-like faces and leathery skin. Honestly, that description just sounds like me and my friends waking up after a night out. The creatures were spotted over a poorly lit bridge, and one was extending its arm upwards and holding a sparkling light above its head. In March of 1972, in the dark of night, Officer Ray Shockey was shocked as he noticed a large animal scurrying in front of his car. Lit by the headlights, Shockey was able to note the large size of the animal. The creature then walked to the side of the road, stood up on its back legs, and climbed over the guardrail down towards the river. 2 weeks later, another officer, Mark Matthews, reported seeing a large crouching animal on the same road. Matthews secured the animal and brought it to Shockey, showing his coworker that the creature was merely an iguana. The Loveland Frog Man has become a less known but very loved cryptid. Renderings of the creature definitely spark a little bit of joy into the viewer of them.
Number 5. Kamataichi. I love doing videos and lists like these ones because I get to spend a lot of time researching into these different cultures and cryptids I never really would have known about without these opportunities, so thanks for watching stuff like this so I can keep on doing them. That's my greedy reason behind it. I just like learning. Our first cryptid from the land of the rising sun is going to be the Kamataichi. This yokai appears as a weasel with razor-sharp sickle-like claws. If you're a Pokemon head, big Pokemon fan, Sneasel from 2nd Gen, the Dark Ice type, he's based on a Kamataichi. They've got spiny fur, similar to a hedgehog, and they bark like a dog, and they have razor-sharp claws. These adorable, funny little guys are extremely lightweight, lighter than the wind itself even, and as such, travel by gusts of wind soaring through the sky like they're radical, furry little windsurfers. Legends of the Kamataichi first came about in the Chubu region of Japan, notorious for its icy sharp winds that were so powerful they would blow men over. These legends then took the form of the Kamataichi, the winds literally personified as this little vermin miscreant. It attacks you in the legs and it knocks you over. You're all exposed and helpless while it picks away at your vitals with its little sickle hands. These creatures are surgical when they strike. A Kamataichi sucks away and feeds on any of the gore left behind by their wounds. These creatures are said to be totally stealthy, impossible to see with the naked eye, and blend into their surroundings well. And here's some pedantic little wordplay trivia. I know all the kids at home love pedantic wordplay trivia. There's some debate as to whether or not Kamataichi's name is nothing more than a cheesy pun. There's a stance that old sword fighters in Japan would use called Kamataichi, translating loosely to sword stance, and well, you can see if you just literally squish those two sounds together. And if you're looking for way more cryptid content, creepy tales, true stories, fake stories, aliens, conspiracies, horror movies, and basically just about everything weird and freaky that could possibly happen on this world, Top 5 Scary is the place to be. So hit subscribe, ring that bell when you do, and stay scared. But also stay watching this video, okay? Nothing I love more than seeing you guys watch them all the way to the end. Now let's keep going. Number 4, Tek Tek. Coming in next is gonna be a fairly newer urban legend, but it gripped me so much I had to include it in this. It's the Tek Tek. Tek Tek is a legend about the ghost of a student who was slain when she fell onto a railway line, where she was then split in half by a train. No easy way to say that, might as well just get it out of the way. Much like an onryo, which, hold on to that thought for now, we're gonna come back to that in a minute. She's a vengeful spirit of a wronged woman who lurks train stations at night, stalking out for her victims. She drags herself across the ground using her arms, dragging the spine sticking out of her torso, scraping across the ground, making a horrifying tick-a-tick-a sound from where she gets her name. And you thought that was just like a cute little sounding name, didn't you? Nope. Try if you can. Just try to get the mental image out of your head of a ghost girl clawing along on just her hands and elbows and her spine following along behind her. And she's also carrying a giant sickle with her, so there's that too. She's really not much of a farmer, so I'll tell you right now, she's not using that for crops. If she finds you, Tek Tek will chase you and slice you in half. Whoops. Some variations say that she only takes your legs, which I guess is better, but really not by much. There's a specific variation of the legend that gives Tek Tek a bit more backstory for her origin, saying her name is Kashima Raiko, and she's a specific entity. She died when her legs were severed from her body, and the next part gets a bit creepy, so you might want to grab onto something, maybe put a little salt circle around your computer. It's said that when an individual learns of Kashima's story, she'll appear to you within the next month. So start timing now, I guess. Kashima Raiko is said to haunt bathroom stalls asking where her legs have gone. If you answer in a way she doesn't approve of, she'll take them from you. Incredibly bizarrely, most of all, this isn't the only bathroom themed horror story on this list, and I'm not joking, so we'll talk about that in a minute, but in the meantime sit tight and wait what I could possibly mean. Number 3, Kamakiri. Something I really like about reading about Japanese yokai and their mythological monsters when you read about a bunch of them is that they tend to kind of fall into 2 categories, you know? It's either the most terrifying thing I have ever heard in my life, a story of a malevolent spirit that's been wronged and will haunt you and do something unspeakable for a painful death, or they're just like weird little goblins or like weird little ghouls that go around doing silly little things. The Kamakiri is one of the silliest little demons I have ever read about, so that's why I'm including them, because they're hilarious. A Kamakiri looks like a weird little bird, like a little bird monster, with a razor sharp beak and very pointed claws. They're teeny tiny and very sneaky to move undetected. So what does the dreaded Kamakiri do? Are you ready for this? Hold on to something because this is going to terrify you. It breaks into your house at night and it cuts your hair. They hide in your roof and they wait at night for the perfect moment to strike, and then they go in and they just mess up your perfect do. They layer it all weird. They cut the ends right off. They frost your tips and they go after anyone, okay? They're not picky. If you've got a head of hair, they want to snip it up. Only the baldies are safe now. They wait until you're asleep. And if you're wondering, you're just sitting there like, why would anyone tell a story about this monster? Why would anyone make this up? It was in periods of Japanese history when long hair was really the only fashion and accepted hairstyle. I would have done great. So the idea of a nobleman having his hair cut in the middle of the night was like spine chilling. These days though, it just makes Kamakiri sound like he's like a college prankster than it does a real monster. But that's only half of why I thought this creature was so funny. Aside from the split end touch-ups, a Kamakiri cutting your hair is said to be a sign that the victim is about to unknowingly marry a yokai. Shapeshifters like Yorigumo or Kitsune can trick young men into marriage. So the Kamakiri steps in and he cuts your hair to let you know you might accidentally end up marrying a demon spider shapeshifter woman. And I just got paid to say that sentence out loud. We made it, ma. Kamakiri, you might win the top 5 scary award for one of the funniest cryptids we've ever talked about on the channel. A solid number 2 compared to my true favorite, Akaname, the demon that comes into your bathroom and eats waste, which I guess would make him number 2. That's the rudest joke I'll ever tell on this channel. I'm so sorry. You guys can cut that if you want. Okay, moving on. Number 2, Akamanto. The Akamanto, also known as the Red Cloak, is a masked spirit and may very well be one of the most evil, weird creatures I've ever heard described in folklore, so just wait till you get a load of this. Now, like any good folktale, there are some local variations in how Akamanto operates, but the elements that remain consistent across all tales are that the Akamanto preys on you during your most personal moments. You know, he tends to come for kings who sit on a porcelain throne. He visits you in the smallest room in the house. He catches you with your pants down. This demon comes for you when you're on the toilet, if that isn't quite getting across yet. I didn't know how to just say it. The Akamanto then offers you a deadly choice. Pulls a little little matrix on you, and it asks you to choose between red toilet paper or blue toilet paper. Kind of like that one scene from Squid Games with the guy offering the paper. Actually, a little funny trivia, the creator of Squid Games confirmed this monster is what inspired that scene. So a little symbolism about that you didn't know about before, and now you do. Now, it's all a trick question, of course. Neither of the toilet papers this ghastly spirit has for you are anything like the Royale kittens. The red paper means you'll find yourself all cut up, leaving behind quite a mess, and the blue option means you'll be left gasping for air, clean, but slow and painful. The only way to escape the Akamanto's dreaded game is to tell him you've got enough, actually, and thanks for asking, but you're good. No, really, you just have to ignore him tell him you're good, or flush quick and hightail it out of there. You know, don't play it smart with him. Don't ask him for purple. Don't ask him for sandpaper. No wise guy answers. He's a toilet paper demon. He doesn't want to hear any of that. It's said that if you mess with him, you mess with the Akamanto, he drags you feet first into the underworld. At least he doesn't flush you. Why did they make that? Why did the backstory behind the toilet paper demon? I do not know. Okay, number 1, Onryo. And our number 1, I went with the Onryo. And Onryo translates almost literally to a vengeful spirit, and in every definition of the words, that statement rings true. They're also sometimes called hatred spirits, because an Onryo is specifically a ghost of someone who is capable of causing grievous harm to the living. Onryo are almost always depicted as women who were wronged in their life. They're not exclusively women, but majority of them are. They were traumatized by their death, and they spend the rest of their days exacting revenge. God forbid women do anything fun, huh? Nailing down exactly what an Onryo is capable of is difficult, because there are so many countless interpretations of the vengeful spirit. But just know at home that nothing good ever comes out of crossing an Onryo. You can expect things like sleep paralysis, telekinesis, curses, evil magic. Like I said, really nothing good. It's worth noting that as part of the legend of an Onryo, her vengeance can never be satisfied, no matter how many enemies she fells in her wake. An Onryo will go after her lovers, family, whoever she had the most lingering pain for. And after she's done with that, well, she'll just attack indiscriminately. You gotta do something with the day, right? Onryo are a very traditional Japanese story, popping up in a lot of performance art pieces like No, Kabuki, and Rakugo, and they even continue to be the center stage in modern works. Probably the most famous Onryo I think most Westerners would know about is Sadako Yamamura from The Ring, otherwise known as Samura if you only saw the American version, and if you have, you gotta fix that at some point for me, okay? An Onryo traditionally is described as wearing a white barrio kimono. She's got wild, unkempt, long black hair obscuring her face, and in stage plays with dramatic white and blue paint, so she looks like the girl from The Ring, basically. And how does one stop an Onryo? Oh, you don't. Yeah, there's nothing. Once she's coming for you, she's coming for you. So, you know, be nice. Just be nice to the ladies in your life and hope that they never come back as vengeful revenge spirits. Number 5, the Honey Island Swamp Monster. Now, our first entry is going to take us down to Louisiana, deep in the bayou, where all manner of sinister creatures are said to call their home. And there's a number of cryptids that live deep in the swamps. We got the Rougarou, the Night Folk, and the Honey Island Swamp Monster, beasts that got my attention right now. The Honey Island Swamp Monster is kind of like a Cajun cousin to Bigfoot. He's described as a gigantic bipedal furry monster resembling a hybrid of ape and man. The creature's been sighted and described dozens of times over through the years, but its initial sightings take us all the way back to the 1960s. This first documented report of Old Honey, as he sometimes likes to be called, comes from an air traffic controller who in his spare time took up wildlife photography, and his favorite spot to snap pictures was in, yep, you guessed it, Honey Island up in eastern Louisiana. After his passing, when relatives were going through his belongings, they found a series of photos and reels of Super 8 film that were thought to contain this creature. Now, he claimed that in his time photographing Honey Island Swamp, he had discovered trails of footprints of these giant feet that showed only 4 toes, and near these untraceable mystery prints were the bodies of boars who had been ravaged beyond recognition. Now, normally I would just say that's probably just the night folk doing what night folk do best, but this definitely sounds like the work of a vicious cryptid. Now, interestingly, there are some cryptozoologists out there who cast a little doubt on the Honey Island Swamp Monster. Not that they don't think he's real, mind you, but that they think he's a different cryptid called the Rougarou, which I mentioned all the way back 30 seconds ago, if you remember that. Another Cajun cryptid that I love so much I couldn't resist sneaking it into this video like he didn't want to pay for a ticket. It's top 6 scary cryptids now. Can't stop me when I'm filming, I make the rules. The Rougarou is described to be similar to a werewolf. It's a giant wolf man who lives in the swamps, but he hunts those those who disobey the rules of Lent, which is surprisingly a lot more pious than most werewolves are. Could both of these creatures be out there in the swamps having a little monster mash out there? And if you're looking for way more cryptid content, we have got loads of that on Top 5 Scary and then some. Cryptid's not your jam? We got conspiracies, UFO sightings, stories too good to be true, and stories too true to be good. Click through, stay screaming, stay subscribed, but stay watching this video because we worked hard on it, okay? Moving on.
Number 4. Ogopogo. One of the most common types of cryptid is the lake monster. There's of course Nessie, the Loch Ness monster, Champ, the lake monster from Lake Champlain, and Ishi, the Japanese lake monster. But for my pick, I'm going to be talking about the legendary creature who is said to reside in the depth of the Lake Okanagan in the Canadian province of British Columbia. It is known as the Ogopogo. This creature is closely tied with native myths, which told of a creature that they called Na'atik, which translated to the water god or water demon. They believed that the creature demanded a sacrifice in exchange for safe passage across the lake. Because of this, the First Nations of the area would sacrifice small animals before entering the water. Stories tell of a visiting chief who refused to offer up a sacrifice as he did not believe in the creature, and as a result, when he and his family tried to cross the lake in their canoe, the creature used his long tail to whip up the surface of the lake and suck the canoe and its occupants down to the bottom of the lake. Ogopogo is often described as being a serpent-like creature, about 50 feet in length, with smooth, dark skin, who moves through the water at incredible speeds by coiling its body in vertical undulations and propelling itself forward with its powerful tail. Every year, there are reports from people claiming to see Ogopogo traveling across the Okanagan, with the usual grainy footage and blurry photos being given as proof of the creature's existence. In the 1980s, a cash reward was offered by a local tourism agency if anyone could prove the beast was real. After harsh words from Greenpeace, they were forced to clarify that the proof must be videotaped, and that if found, the monster was not to be captured. The Ogopogo is officially listed as an endangered species and is therefore protected from hunters. In one of the creature's most famous sightings, he was seen by 50 tourists who watched the Ogopogo for 45 minutes from the shore of a local beach, with one tourist being able to capture 10 seconds of 8mm film featuring the monster. Skeptics say that the sightings of the creature are usually groups of otters that are mistaken for one long creature rather than the several animals swimming together in a row. But regardless of the origin of this cryptid, or whether he is real or not, the Ogopogo has become a beloved tourist draw for the area, with the city of Kelowna, BC, even having a statue of the creature as both a nod to local legend and a place for tourists to take their photo with the mythical creature.
Number 3. El Chupacabra. Since the 1970s, livestock farmers have said its name with a careful whisper, hushed tones under their breath. Is this creature even real, or is it just another tall tale that's gotten out of hand? The Chupacabra is a cryptid notorious across Latin America and the southwestern United States. Its name literally translates to goat sucker, which is hilarious, in reference to its vampiric feeding habits. Now, depending on who is telling the stories and where, interestingly enough, the Chupacabra's appearance varies fairly wildly. In Spanish-speaking countries like Puerto Rico, the Chupacabra is depicted as very alien in appearance. It's very reptilian, has like little bug eyes, and has spines running down its arm and its back. Now, alternatively, and this is the depiction I suspect more of you probably know it as this is the more North American southwestern version of it, the classic Chupacabra, if you'd like, is depicting it as a feral, canid-like creature, looking like a mutant dog, usually with missing chunks of fur, angry snarls. Looks something more like out of Resident Evil than it would be an alien. I think it's very funny that these are the two speeds of Chupacabra. You have alien or weird dog. There's a small section of the cryptozoology community who suspect that these two might actually be two entirely different cryptids altogether, and we're conflating them, complicating matters ever so slightly, but you know, that's an argument for the cryptid subreddit. A lot of politics there, that's all I'll say. The first origins of the critter can be traced back to the 70s in Puerto Rico, when a string of mysterious, extremely violent livestock deaths were all happening around the country with no explanation for what had happened. These animals, primarily goats and sheep, would be found drained bone dry of their bodily fluids. That's why it's called the goat sucker. There are some experts who believe it's possible that the Chupacabra could be sightings of a thought extinct species called the thylacine, and that's probably not how you pronounce that. I could have looked it up. Known more formally to his friends as the Tasmanian tiger. It's a weird little critter that doesn't quite look like a cat, doesn't quite look like a dog, and is kind of somewhere in the middle. Very cute, but it's thought to be extinct, with its last remains being officially found in 2022. There are some skeptics and experts out there who wonder if perhaps this real-life mythical beast could be what people have seen when they see the chupacabra. So what do you think, my delightful little comment section? Is the fabled chupacabra really out there terrorizing the lives of goats, or would you have to be a sucker to believe that?
Oh, because he sucks goats.
Yeah, that's what you gotta get down on the car ride home. Number 2, the Goat Man of Maryland. Maryland is a beautiful state that a lot of important people over the years have called home. Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Babe Ruth, and if you believe the folklore, the Maryland Goat Man. I've talked about the Maryland Goat Man a few times on this channel, and I'm very likely to talk about him a few more times because he's a cryptid who just can't be bleat. Like beat, because he's a goat.
Oh!
I'll see myself out. No, there's more of me. The Goat Man is a villain straight out of a direct-to-DVD horror movie. Said to resemble a satyr, this Chronicles of Narnia extra haunts the woods of Maryland, hatchet in hand, ready to attack anyone who dares disturb its territory. Like any good cryptid, there's some variations depending on who's telling the story of what he looks like. Sometimes he's more humanoid with a human face and a furry body, whereas sometimes it's outright monstrous with a goat's head and bipedal, looking like something out of a Greek myth. I greatly prefer the latter. The Goat Man has been a popular urban legend for a while now, with the earliest sightings and stories going all the way back to the 70s, when dogs around the area of Bowie, Maryland, were going missing at an alarming rate. Whispers came out about a malicious goat man who was stalking the woods, taking your pets as his prey, and these rumors caught on like wildfire, and the character became a very popular campfire story. You know, you'd see graffiti sprayed on the walls saying things like, Goat Man was here, or Goat Man is watching, remind you to behave. Now, Goat Man's possible backstories are far too good to include. It's half the reason I have such a fondness for this cryptid. Depending on what Marylander you're talking to, you might hear that the Goat Man is a complete mystery. Just a strange goat demon who's bad to the bone. Or, if you want a way more colorful backstory, like I know you do, then the Goat Man is the product of a mysterious mad scientist's experiment to, I don't know really, do something with goats. Very possible this could be a Jeff Goldblum fly situation, somebody merged with a goat. Anyway, he escapes from the lab and he wreaks havoc on humanity and is said to mostly haunt Lover's Lane and go after teenagers in parked cars. I way prefer the backstory where he's a lab experiment and he's like a furry Jason Voorhees going after people smooching. Goat Man, we absolutely love you. If you are watching, please feel free to reach out, DM Top 5 Scary. We would love to have you on the channel to do a collab. You can share your side of things.
Number 1, Man Bear Pig. This next creature has been described as the most super serial threat to our planet. You see, there is something out there which threatens our very existence and may be the end to the human race as we know it. I'm talking, of course, about Man Bear Pig. It is a creature which roams the earth alone. It is half man, half bear, and half pig. Some people say that Man Bear Pig isn't real. Well, I'm here to tell you now. Man Bear Pig is very real, and he most certainly exists. I'm serial. Man Bear Pig doesn't care who you are or what you've done. Man Bear Pig simply wants to get you. I'm super serial. He is said to be a demon from hell that thrives on temptation and is known for making deals with societies, giving them nice cars and premium style ice cream, and then repaying the debt by unleashing unspeakable horrors and carnage upon the next generation. This deal was made by generations who knew the cost that the deal would have on their ancestors, but they were not expecting to live long enough to see the consequences of their actions. Man Bear Pig was recently responsible for a lethal series of attacks in Colorado, but despite the brutality in front of them, many locals still refused to believe that such a creature could exist. There is a rumor that a new deal was offered by the demon, where the town could stave off annihilation if they could give up soy sauce and Red Dead Redemption 2. Of course, the town refused such an unfair offer, cause plain rice, ugh. They instead renegotiated the deal with Man Bear Pig so that he would simply return in 5 years and unleash his fury 1,000-fold. How long do we have before Man Bear Pig returns? And is there anything we can do to stop him? If only we had taken Al Gore more serial.
A large insectoid something spotted in Oregon. So back in the early 2000s, a man by the name of Adam Brittle was out for a bike ride at around 4:45 in the morning near the Willamette River in Eugene, Oregon. The spot he chose to stop and rest at was next to the famous Owen Rose Garden Park, and Interstate 5 ran overhead. So he was underneath, next to the river. He put his back against one of the support beams from the highway and was just chilling. But that's when he noticed some strange things going on across the river from where he was, which he estimates was maybe 50 feet on the bank. He saw two tall, thin but very muscular, mantis insect beings on the other bank. Yucky. The first one was less than 10 feet from the water's edge, not moving at all, but its eyes were open and glassy like mirrors. And there was a person there, on the ground, face down and looking like maybe he fell, and that's when Adam noticed the second hellion. Now you might be asking yourself, how or why didn't Adam notice the second creature before that point? It's because this thing wasn't super clear to his eyes since it was jerking backwards and forwards so quickly over another body that seemed to move like a blur, which that's very fast. So at this point, obviously Adam was a little terrified. Like, yes, that should be obvious, but I wanted to make sure I was crystal clear. He slid forward from his pole, attempting to quietly move away, but looked back up against his will, and that's when he heard strange talking and what sounded like the banging of metal on concrete. He was met with the view of what looked like a white, bald man with big black sunglasses peering out from behind the pillar barely 15 feet away from him. Adam made eye contact with whatever it was and scrambled to get out of there as quickly as he could. He stumbled a couple of times, never looking back as he hopped on his bike and began pedaling like his life depended on it. And hey, as far as we know, maybe it did. Right after he started riding, his stomach decided to start emptying itself from the stress of the entire situation, and that's when something flashed by Adam, and it was so quick that it seemed like it was running at hyperspeed. He decided to go to the hospital to be safe, and outside the window of the emerge waiting area, he observed a black car doing laps around the building for a solid hour, as if it was waiting for something or somebody. And the windows were fogged, so all he could make out were the outline of 3 bodies, which only added to his fear until they left. And he's just sitting there like, I need help, but at the same time, I'm feeling scared. A couple of days after the whole debacle, Adam was feeling brave and went back to the scene of the unknown to try and figure things out. He noticed a lack of any kind of track marks or footsteps where the unknown creatures had been, but it almost looked like the area had been dug up and resettled, which creepy. Now apparently he hasn't seen the creatures ever since, but like, who knows? Time to venture over to Monterey Bay for the tale of Bobo. Will you indulge me and allow me to tell this like the incredible story it is? Thank you kindly. It was a clear fall day, and the Pacific Ocean was as flat and clear as a giant mirror. From Captain Sal Coletto's small salmon fishing boat, 10 miles off Moss Landing, the indentation of Monterey Bay on the shore looked like a giant thumbprint as he headed back towards Point Pinos. After a day of luckless fishing in the waters of Santa Cruz, the Monterey fisherman was looking forward to getting home. Suddenly, Coletto noticed something floating in the sea about a half-mile farther out. Thinking it might be a man bobbing in the ocean, he revved the engine and headed out towards the object. When the captain got within 100 feet of the thing, he saw a creature with a head the size of a 50-gallon barrel. It was tapered to where a duck-like bill protruded from the massive bulging forehead. Coletto started to think about how a pair of fishermen had disappeared recently without a trace. Maybe this sea monster had devoured them. Not wanting to join their ranks, he pushed his boat's throttle all the way down and headed back towards the Monterey Peninsula. He decided that he wasn't going to tell anybody about what he'd seen. He was like, no, I don't feel like being labeled crazy. Zip. 16 years later though, Coletto was traveling towards the fishing grounds off of Half Moon Bay on his 45-foot boat, the Dante Alighieri, and while the crew ate lunch in the galley below, Coletto and his brother-in-law swapped fishing stories as the craft headed northwards. Eventually, his brother-in-law started talking about a strange sea creature that he'd spotted a few times at the edge of the deep Monterey submarine canyon. Coletto got the chills as his brother-in-law described how other fishermen had said the beast would only surface on calm, sunny days, about 24 hours before a strong northwest wind would start to blow. And this was a windless day, and the water was smooth and silver as liquid mercury. As Coletto gazed towards the Santa Cruz Mountains, he observed something bobbing in the sea, and his heart fluttered like a dying fish's gills. He realized immediately that it was that strange creature once again. He yelled out to the crew, all hands on deck. They poured out of the galley and stood on the bow of the boat, wondering what the commotion was all about. I want all of you guys to see this, he said, as he slowly brought the boat closer to the beast. The captain then cut the motor, and the boat drifted within 50 feet of the object. The creature's eyes were closed, and it floated on the surface as if it was sunbathing or sleeping. It has the face of a monkey, his cook squealed. Let's leave. This is a bad omen. His brother-in-law was like, oh no, that looks like the face of an old man. Now the noise must have awakened the monster, and it slowly opened its eyes, which were as big and pink as grapefruits. The creature's body was brown and almost as long as a boat. Its skin was wrinkled and sagged from its frame like ill-fitting clothing. Coletto thought to himself that this was a very old animal, and while the crew argued about what it looked like, the monster quietly slid underwater. Following the sighting, several other fishermen saw the creature, and eventually the people of the area started to refer to the animal as Bobo, the old man of the sea. So from then on, Coletto kept a camera on his vessel, hoping to once again spot Bobo and get photographic evidence of its existence. Sadly, he never saw it again. But a few years later, in 1925, a strange sea creature washed ashore on a beach about 2 miles miles north of Santa Cruz. Though the body was decomposed, scientists, including the notable E.L. Wallace, a former president of the Natural History Society of British Columbia, didn't think that this was the carcass of a whale or a shark. He's like, this might be a plesiosaurus, a large marine reptile held over from the Jurassic period, but he couldn't tell you for sure. And here's the thing, reportings of this creature continue to this day. To this day. Yeah, that's creepy enough. No thank you. Oh, we're not done with unknown sea cryptids yet, folks. We're just moving 26 miles over to Capitola. A captain who prefers to stay anonymous was driving a team towards the area when suddenly his attention was captured by some young sea lions not far out. They were lined up and several large lions were swimming back and forth in front of them. Much farther out, he saw the water being churned to foam and then thrown high up in the air. It was shiny, and at first he was like, okay, it's just a big fish, whatever. A dozen or more so lions were battling it, and every once in a while, all would rise out of the water. So it was looking to him as though all the sea lions were attacking it beneath, and then the monster came out of the water several times. Afterwards, when he was telling the story, he's like, I think it's about 30 feet long. So a few days later, the body of a strange creature was discovered by Charles Moore on the shore in that very same area that our witness saw the battle. The body was examined by none other than E.L. Wallace. You know that expert I just talked about? Pretty great. And he's like, my examination of the monster was quite thorough. I felt at its mouth and found it had no teeth. Its head is large and its neck fully 20 feet long. The body is weak and the tail is only 3 feet in length from the end of the backbone. These facts do away with the whale theory, as the backbone of a whale is far larger than any bone in this animal. And once again, its tail is too weak for an animal of the deep and does away with that last version. And with a bill like this, it must have lived on herbage. So later he offered the theory that the monster might have been preserved in a glacier for millions of years, finally being released by the gradual melting of ice and eventually ending up in the area. But to this day, nobody knows exactly what that thing was. Just that there tends to be a lot of aquatic cryptid activity all in the same area. Time to move out of this bay and venture over to the Bridgewater Triangle. It is one of the most haunted areas in Massachusetts, heck, just a notable spooky spot in the overall United States. Matt Danchuk and his buddies decided one night, around 3 a.m. in the morning, that it would be a fun idea to go exploring the Profile Rock area, just for laughs. Look, I know we can all see where this is going, but I'm gonna tell the story anyways. If you can't see, well, 3 a.m. is not a good time to go exploring, folks. So guys were on their way out, they were walking down a long winding path to get back to their vehicle, they'd done their exploring, but that's when stuff began to happen. So let's set the scene for everybody. It's pitch black out, the only thing the guys could see was the moon shining through the trees, and Matt felt the need to turn around while they were walking. Not sure why, but something caught his eye. He spotted some sort of creature, limply running towards the group. It was about 100 feet away, favoring one leg over the other. Now initially he thought it was somebody who got injured in the woods or something, until he saw this thing run past the moonlight. So you know how when somebody draws a person as like a stick figure, like that? Apparently that's exactly how this thing looked. It had no facial features, no face, just a completely blank-like stick figure. Its body looked the same from what Matt could see, no definition or anything. Now Matt nudged his buddy to turn around as well. When he saw the look of horror go across his friend's face, they made eye contact and just ran until they reached their vehicle. They never saw the creature again, and thankfully haven't attempted a stupidly risky 3 a.m. jaunt again either. Like, common sense. Apparently it ain't so common. Alrighty everybody, how about I end today with a classic? Good old Bigfoot. A truck driver in Greene County near Wind Ridge, near a gas well site, saw a large, coarsely haired, covered figure in the headlights of his truck. After initially thinking it was a stump, it stood there and looked at him as he was passing, and then jumped into the thick brush behind itself away from the road. He thinks it was about 7 to 8 feet tall, very thickly built in the arms and legs with very large hands, and had a flat face, wide mouth, and a wide and flat nose. He observed the large foot and toe pads as it turned and jumped into the brush. He contacted dispatch to inform them, and the next day the company's safety team reviewed the video and determined that wasn't a bear, and he verified that other coworkers had also seen a similar subject about 4 miles away at another well site. And it was so scary that some folks actually quit their jobs over it. And because he likes his evidence, he also confirmed with a local property owner that he had also heard and recorded similar subjects in the area. Maybe it's time I invest in a dash cam for my own vehicle. Alrighty everybody, so since I'm Canadian, how about we start off today with a report out of West Dalhousie, Nova Scotia. Back in 2010, a man named Andre Shields entered a contest with the province of Nova Scotia to win a chance to get a prize in a commercial for tourism on TV. The area he decided to go visit still had frozen snow, and since it was the end of March, apparently the hike was nice. From time to time, Andre felt like somebody was watching him, but he assumed it was like a coyote or something, since it was an area that was heavily populated with wildlife. Oh, by the way, his brilliant idea was to show off the caves in the area for the contest, which hey, I'm not an expert, but exploring caves alone sounds pretty dang dangerous to me. Andre has mentioned that at the time, he had a fascination with caves, and still does to this day. And like, once again, I get it, they're neat, but like, Safety first? So it was when he was filming the caves that Andre started hearing footsteps outside. The cave he was in was made up of split granite, incredibly squared off like a tomb with the features of a pyramid outside, as well as possibly Nova Scotia's only known stone animal figure, to the extent of his knowledge. I haven't really been able to find info to confirm or deny, so let me know in the comments if you know otherwise. After a few minutes, he realized the footsteps were bipedal, aka somebody who can walk on two legs, so probably not a random coyote. Which, by the way, props to him for not being terrified of those creatures, since the thought of seeing those in the wild would send me running. Around the same time, he started smelling something like dirty gym shoes, and apparently it was like really bad, and I don't even want to try to picture what that smells like because I don't need to gag again on here. Been there, done that, not fun. Finally, common sense kicked in for Andre and he decided to try and get the heck out of there. He exited the cave and looked to the west and saw something standing behind a tree, and ergo decided to go the other way and used a tree as a fireman's pole to slide down. Now at this point, I think he thought it might have been a bear, and speaking from experience, yikes dude, your safety is so not worth this video or contest. So he was tiptoeing back towards the trail when he turned around and saw something using fingers to peer through the branches at him. The silhouette was that of a very tall man, and its hands had black nails, light brown hair, its eyes were very large and dark, and the face looked like a monkey man with pinkish brownish skin. His words, not mine. He started his camera back up and tried recording, and the creature wasn't moving while he was. And soon enough, his reaction of absolute fear was recorded when he started running. Eventually, he stopped at a large puddle to catch his breath and saw where something huge had stepped into a smaller tree and the moss, leaving a massive print, and into the water, leaving another. So he took some pictures and kept going, realizing it had come from the same direction he was running towards. Well, he kept running, he noticed oddly bent trees, broken branches, and just got the heck out of there. He didn't dare venture into the woods again until like 2022. And gee, I wonder why. Next up, we have a spotting from last August in Texas. So this all started with a bizarre daylight animal sighting. Tina Colleague was pretty stumped, so she reached for a camera. She's like, okay, let's get some pictures. I don't know what this is, but maybe somebody else will. But sadly, the photos didn't do much to clarify the critter's identity. Instead, they opened a Pandora's box of cryptid theories, which is where we come in. All Tina knows for sure is that the animal enjoyed chowing down on berries that had fallen from a bush in her hill country village backyard. In an interview, she later recalled, she was inside, she looked out into the yard and saw an animal and was like, okay, what is it? The creature was a yellowish brown color and appeared to be almost the size of a large dog, with a long tail that almost touched the ground and very large pricked ears. After getting the images, she uploaded them to Nextdoor, that's a little social media thing, for a little local feedback. And her neighbors were like, I don't know either. And that's when all the different theories and possibilities started pouring in. Because it's the internet, everybody's got their 2 cents. They included everything from a coyote dog mix to the chupacabra. So I'm sure you can guess where my thoughts lie on the matter. Now, that name refers to a mythical reptile-like creature in parts of the Americas that is said to stand 3 to 4 feet high, hop like a kangaroo, and attack and drink the life source of livestock. Some folks also thought it might have been the legend of an area mountain lion that a lot of people have long sighted but never caught on camera. Now, this isn't the first time that the Texas parks and wildlife officials have proven stumped by something caught on camera. In April of last year, a wildlife camera in the Rio Grande Valley revealed a never-before-seen animal as well. But when it comes to the case of Tina's unknown species, a lot of folks who watched the video were like, we've got some guesses. They're like, okay, maybe it's a wolverine, it could be a bush dog, optical illusion, maybe 2 wild hogs passing by one another. So Rachel Melstoff of the San Antonio Zoo weighed in, thinking that it might be a dog or a canine dealing with mange or other skin conditions. And hey, without better pictures, who knows? My theory? A chupacabra, just wanting to enjoy some fresh berries in peace. Who doesn't like some fresh raspberries or blueberries? I know I do. This next one is for my Mothman fans. I know y'all are out there. This tale is from 2016, which is back when I was in my first year of university. Little Alexa, back when I thought a career in radio was still possible. This story comes out of Point Pleasant in West Virginia, and over there, Mothman is a local legend that over the years has gained worldwide fame. A man who wishes to stay anonymous says he was driving along State Route 2 and saw something jump from tree to tree, so he pulled off the road and snapped a couple of photos. As you do. Now, he's declined any kind of on-camera interview, doesn't want his name out there, but he was adamant that the pictures had not been doctored. He said he recently moved to the area for work and didn't even know about the legend. Look, just off the bat, if the guy wants to stay anonymous, that only adds to the legitimacy for me. He's not in it for money, he's not in it for fame. What else does he want? In the pictures, the creature appears to have wings with pointed tips and long legs, bent at an awkward angle. Now, Point Pleasant locals such as Carolyn Harris believe the pictures could be real because there have been so many other sightings over the years. She even said, "I definitely know the Mothman is real." Now, the Mothman was reportedly sighted in Point Pleasant by witnesses from November 15th to December 15th of 1966 originally. Author John Keel popularized local folklore about the creature with his 1975 book, The Mothman Prophecies, which was later adapted into a 2002 feature film with the same title, starring a lot of people, including Richard Gere. You know, you've seen it. Harris has owned the Mothman Diner in Point Pleasant for over 48 years and also helped start the Mothman Festival. Oh, I love that. She's mentioned, like, there's been too many sightings of the Mothman for her to not believe. She's talked to a lot of first responders, the sheriff's department, and they've made a believer out of her. Some folks believe the Mothman is a bad omen, only appearing when catastrophe is about to strike. But there's been many claims that the winged, red-eyed creature was seen right before the Point Pleasant Silver Bridge collapse in 1967. Now, back to Harris. She's met a lot of Mothman believers over the years who visit her diner. There's a lot of news sources that have talked to local experts, and I know one of them was Jeff Wamsley, the local Mothman expert on everything, and the owner of the Mothman Museum. And they're like, okay, you see these, what do you think? And he's mentioned, like, with modern technology, it's almost impossible to know for sure if the pictures are real. But it doesn't matter if they're real or not. The benefits the legend of Mothman brings to the town are very real. He's like, it's a good thing. It brings a lot of people to the area. He's here to stay. Me personally, I think it's real. So technically, I don't know the location of this next video, but it was definitely something that had me going, what the bleep? And at this point, that's newsworthy. The narrator of the video starts off by saying, "I'm at a horse stable right now, as you can see. The other day I was walking over here, I saw a guy working the land. He works in the horse stable." Okay, we've got that. So our narrator's like, hey, anytime I see a guy working the land, I get curious. I got some questions. So he's like, okay, have you ever seen anything interesting out there? And oftentimes he'll be like, oh yeah, you know, I've seen some coyotes, as one does. But this is where, once again, Alexa interjects, because I would love to know how people are so casual with talking about coyotes, like, So, back to our narrator. He's like, okay, so as the conversation's warming up, he's like, hey, new guy, you ever see anything out here you can't explain? And apparently the moment he said that, this new guy's eyes lit up. He was like, it's really weird you asked me that question. He's like, just last week, my buddy took the craziest video back in these woods. So he pulls up his buddy's private Facebook page, and well, it's a private Facebook page, and he was like, oh, I'm gonna send you this link, which, if you ever try to send a link from a private page, not gonna happen. So apparently we had to pull up a video, one phone, another phone, screen record, all these things. We've got the video. I haven't seen anybody be able to explain what the heck is going on in it. So, what do you guys think? What's super weird about the video is the guy who took the video won't even go back into the woods anymore. And did you see the dog in the video? So that dog was growling and was looking over into the area where the apparition appears. And just what a crazy video. To quote the guy, I can't believe it, and I haven't been able to figure out what's going on. I know we've been showing the TikTok since I've started talking, so like, what do you folks think? Hey look, having a dog going haywire adds to the validity for me. Animals are super perceptive of the weird and ooky spooky, and they're a good marker of just, what the heck? Okie dokie everyone, we're gonna end today with a video that's close to home for me, a spotting of Bigfoot from Northern Ontario. Now it isn't specified where, but since the terrain looks pretty familiar to me, I'd be willing to bet on Northeastern Ontario to be specific. It shows what clearly appears to be a Sasquatch walking in a wooded area near a body of water. The video was shared by the Rocky Mountain Sasquatch organization, and it was stated along with the video that these boaters in Northern Ontario had recently captured the incident. No specific time or location of the sighting was provided, but you know my guess. So the boaters were recording the nearby shoreline when a large biped with reddish brown hair stepped out from the woods and walked across the open shoreline, providing a clear, even though brief, view to the onlookers. It quickly disappears into the trees, but the fluid movement of the Sasquatch is noted, along with its deftness in navigating the rocky and steep terrain with ease. So because of the dexterity demonstrated in the video recording, I find it difficult to imagine that this was anything other than an actual Sasquatch, as opposed to a human dressed in a heavy and bulky suit. I've been a mascot a number of times. You don't move that fluidly. This isn't the only time I've spoken about Sasquatch-type cryptids being spotted up north, so I genuinely think there's a whole slew of them enjoying the deep woods and slightly cooler climate up there. I vote we let them exist in peace. In 5th place, we have flying monkeys. Yep, you heard me right. While The Wizard of Oz might be one of my all-time favorite films, heck, I've even cosplayed Dorothy alongside my childhood Toto plush, it took me a while to wrap my head around this sighting. Darla of Jacksonville, Florida, experienced this event in May of 2017 that left her completely bewildered. She was driving on a neighborhood street and the strange animal was on the roadway. She could see its head and it looked kind of like a monkey, but it was smaller, similar in size to a prairie dog or a gopher. She found herself repeating, "What on earth is that?" to her friend that was in the car with her as she drove around it, seeing as it wasn't moving and was possibly dazed by the headlights headlights on her vehicle. I'm hoping she didn't have her high beams on because they fry out my eyes, so I don't want to imagine what it would do to a little critter. Her friend thought it was like a possum at first, until they passed it and agreed that it definitely didn't resemble a possum, but they still couldn't come to a consensus on what it was. Darla turned the vehicle around and all she could see were wings that seemed way too large for the size of what she had seen flying away. Now the logical part of her brain took over and deemed whatever the heck it was too big to be an owl, so maybe it was snatched up in the sky by an owl? At this point we've named off every similar creature in the same size range. Darla pulled over to mentally dissect what she had just seen to try and make sense of it. It was a being that was kinda on the smaller size, with a head, a neck, the ability to stand solidly on 2 legs, oh, and with extremely large wings. I was gonna say, that was almost my description. If anyone has any solid guesses, feel free to let me know in the comments. She knew that the nearby Walmart had monkeys living in the parking lot after independent owners let them escape, leaving her confused for eternity. All that comes to my brain after that description, for me personally, is the damn IKEA monkey, but wearing like a Wizard of Oz evil witch uniform instead of the oversized coat. I'm glad Darla managed to avoid any harm to herself or to her vehicle, but I know I'll be wondering exactly what the heck that creature would be for the rest of the night. Yeah, I got nothing. In 4th place, we had a Manananggal from the Philippines. I swear I do look up how to pronounce new words, but my tongue just doesn't like them on occasion, and sometimes I get led astray by false pronunciation videos. 2 young women in Talisay City are positive that they spotted this creature. The name comes from the Tagalog word tanggal, which means to remove or to separate. Oh, for those of us who aren't experts on this creature, it's a being whose upper body separates from its lower body, possesses fangs and wings that give them a vampire-like appearance, and resides exclusively in the Philippines. This creature is said to favor preying on sleeping pregnant women, using an elongated proboscis-like tongue to suck the hearts of fetuses or the life source of someone who is sleeping. Now, as usual, local police are trying desperately to cover up this spotting, but thanks to social media, that's getting harder and harder for them to do. And we all know I hate a cover-up. Our 2 witnesses went to a neighbor's house to get a Wi-Fi connection, and afterwards, while they were returning to their own home, they spotted the Manananggal on top of a roof of a neighbor's house. Now, the neighbor in question sadly didn't bear witness to the majestic creature, just both women shouting and crying. Police also interviewed another neighbor, whose house is close to this first neighbor's home, and he claimed to see the same thing. You know, the girls were shouting and crying, but nothing in the sky. Seeing as we have photographic evidence though, I'll let you lovely folks out there in the interwebs form your own opinions down in the comments. In 3rd place, we have a winged humanoid. I swear the entire list isn't going to be winged beings, I promise. Come on, don't you folks trust me by now? Look at this face. I don't think I've ever led y'all wrong. Chicago-based private investigator Manuel Navarrete was hanging out with his friends in a bakery parking lot on February 5th of this year, just chatting and vibing, as one does, when the group noticed something standing on top of the flea market across the parking lot. It looked like a pitch-black, 7-foot-tall man with wings that were wider than a car and red eyes that were as bright as taillights. The creature was observing Manuel and his buddies closely, making chirping noises that the group could hear clearly from the distance they were at, which was around 50 yards away even without the height difference. Now the group continued their staring contest with the being for almost 10 minutes before it flew straight into the air and over the group of dudes, watching them the entire time. The men fought the temptation to run, not wanting to lead the creature anywhere or trigger like a prey response. They estimate the entire encounter happened between 11 to 11:30 p.m. and it was a rather clear evening, so there was no chance of clouds warping what they saw. I'll leave you folks with something fun to ponder over. This is the 8th confirmed sighting reported in that area since 2017, and no one is positive what the heck this creature is, just that it's out there. In 2nd place, we have a glimmer man in Chicago. See, I told y'all. No more winged whatevers. The only connection this encounter has to the last one is that they were both based out of Chicago, but in different areas of the city and took place within the last year. Other than that, no relation. Stella's experience took place on September 2nd of 2022, after a day of running errands for her elderly father, when she had returned to his apartment building and 6th floor residence. She went out on the balcony for a cigarette break, just standing and allowing her mind to go blank, when she noticed a weird large tree around 20 feet away. Yes, I'll obviously elaborate. One of the branches on the tree was bowing quite heavily, but Stella couldn't see anything on it that could be responsible for weighing it down. So as she was staring at the branch and trying to make sense of what her eyes were seeing, an intense feeling of dread and fear came over her, as if every part of her body was screaming at her to turn around and run, but she didn't know why. At this very moment, the bowing branch that she had just been observing began to shake violently, and despite her internal instincts still screaming at Stella, leave, curiosity had now gotten the better of her, and she started to move along the railing to get a closer look. As your friendly narrator, this is where I interject and tell anyone with some sense to, run! But hey, what do I know? It's not like I talk about this for a living. A small form began to glimmer on the branch, and as Stella continued to watch in shock, a transparent human figure that shimmered a yellowish-whitish color developed. Stella snapped out of her fixated stare and quickly took a step back from the railing, realizing finally that this is something that maybe should be feared. Glad the old common sense kicked in after the overwhelming fear, dread, and visual. Should have kicked in sooner in my opinion, but that's just my usual snark kicking in. The shimmery being eventually dropped out of the tree, landing behind a man who happened to be walking past at the time. Now the walking man spun around, his reaction similar to as if he had been hit with an object from behind, and was confused when all he saw was a cloud of smoke. Oh, by the way, the shimmery man had disappeared in the puff of smoke almost instantly after hitting the ground. Now Stella waited for some time, expecting to see this thing re-emerge from the dust or smoke, but it was completely gone. At the same time, another neighbor just a few floors below Stella and her dad had also observed exactly the same thing as her and managed to confirm all the same details. Now the neighbor and Stella then managed to track down the man who was walking past a few hours later, and after a conversation, confirmed that he had felt the weird impact, the overwhelming dread, but didn't see anything. Stella is positive that the Glimmerman still roams the area, often feeling the overwhelming emotions from the day whenever she visits her dad, but hasn't spotted it since. My heart goes out to her, and I hope whatever it is buggers off soon for her sake. In our first place, we have an aquatic cryptid in Vancouver. I swear ending today's video on a Canuck tale wasn't planned, but when it works, it works. Taylor Wallace is a private investigator based out of BC who was hired to find evidence of a person that's gone missing without a trace, only to find after a more than 6-year investigation evidence of large clawed creatures that could very well be eating people. The photos he has provided as proof show a large claw print in the sand that was found among others next to a headless seal that he discovered in 2016. So a large claw print cut into solid stone that was found in 2022, a cave made by something with large claws that has a red fluid-soaked entrance with a red claw print on the cave wall above it, and 3 separate scat samples from a large animal, believed to be one of these creatures, one of which contains very much what looks like a human fingernail. The area these were found in was a couple hundred feet around a lake from the public beach, and there were dozens and dozens of large claw marks coming out of the water and onto shore in various places that didn't belong to any kind of water creature that he could identify. Heck, after staring at them for quite a while myself, and with the knowledge I have of, beings at this point, the only thing in my brain that they look like are velociraptor claws. And I know that's not right. Not unless these photos came from Isla Nublar without telling anyone. Now Taylor has been returning regularly to the beach in question and has gathered multitudes of more evidence each time. He sadly found another decapitated seal and copious amounts of evidence of a large aquatic creature that's coming out of the ocean on a daily basis to feed on seals, ducks, and snow geese. Not only are there large digs and claw prints in the hard ground everywhere, made by a creature with, big claws, but the remains of dead animals are all over the park. Coyotes are the largest predators in the area, and he's never seen one in that park. But the claw prints are way too big to be coyotes or even just like a large dog. These digs are much bigger than even bears or cougars, and you don't even see those in the area. Okay, not gonna visit Vancouver anytime soon. I'll stick to the natural predators here in Toronto. Oh, and crappier evidence, in that nearby park, he's collected those 3 separate scat samples that I mentioned earlier, and he's hoping that that human fingernail that he found in one of them is from the missing human that he's been looking for years, so we can stop visiting this area and seeing all this weird stuff. Now, interestingly enough, where he's found evidence of these creatures, it matches up with the locations of people who have gone missing without a trace. Alrighty folks, check up on your BC friends and warn them to not go swimming alone anytime soon, or walk in any parks. Yikes. And now that I'm scouring the skies for winged terrors, that brings me to the end of our list today. Honestly, just when I think I have a good grasp on cryptid knowledge, it's days like today where I feel like I don't know anything, and my childhood fear of the unknown in the dark comes back out to play. The one-eyed Indian tale of battling a band of red-haired hunchback giants has caused speculation that a tribe of Stone Age beings may inhabit the jungles of northern Peru. The men were described as olive-skinned, barefooted, hunched back, more than 6 foot 6 inches tall, with feet twice the size of normal folks. One scientist recently said he doubted their existence, but a well-known amateur anthropologist said it was well within scientific probability. Now these giants have only been reported in San Juan province, an area of rainforests and wooded foothills east of the Andes. Its roughly 200,000 residents have no telephone service or paved roads, according to my research. Rumors of giant tribesmen have circulated frequently in the past and received fresh momentum when an explorer said he had stumbled upon them. Carlos Terrelza, discoverer of the ruins of a lost Indian city in San Martin province, said he had found the giants when he was lost for 2 weeks in the jungle. He said they were clad only in animal skins with reddish hair and spoke a dialect he had never heard. It also fled at his approach. Well, days later, 2 Lima newspapers, Ultima Hora and La Prensa, quoted an Indian guide, Encarnacion de Puri, as saying that at one point a group of about 15 folks armed with thick wooden clubs, stone-headed axes, and hardwood lances attacked a camp of professional hunters. La Prensa said the tribesmen had abducted 3 women and wounded 5 men in the camp before being driven off by the blast. Ultima Hora said 5 men, 3 women, and more had been injured, but did not mention any kidnapping. Well, the director at the time of the Regional Center of Indian Remains, Cristobal Crespana, said, "I don't believe in the existence of these hunchbacked men. They correspond to precisely none of the racial traits of the people seen in the Andean region so far." But Carlos A. Silva, a policeman and amateur anthropologist who traveled widely in the Peruvian jungles, said the indigenous Peruvians could adapt very easily to live into the forested areas of the foothills. Nevertheless, not going there. An interesting video has emerged from Mexico that shows what appears to be a small bipedal humanoid scurrying across a road. The video was reportedly captured in January of 2024 by a security camera at a farm in the city of Monterey and subsequently offered online back in May. So a small dark form exits from a wooden area on the side of the road and then darts across the dirt path. Then it just vanishes back into the brush. So some folks believe it is the sighting of a duende, a humanoid figure of folklore that is comparable to goblins, dwarves, gnomes, or leprechauns. Fun fact, by the way, in Spanish, duende originated as a contraction of the phrase dueño de casa, effectively master of the house. Or perhaps it's derived from some similar mythical being of the Visigoth or Swabian culture, given it kind of looks similar to the tomte of the Swedish language, which is conceptualized, if I'm not mistaken, as a mischievous spirit inhabiting a dwelling. Nevertheless, little guy? Demonic? Spanish folklore is rich in tales and legends about various types of duendes. The anjanas, buscosos, dianos, enanos, elfos, hadas, gnomos. I could go on and on. In some regions of Spain, duendes may have other names, like the trasnos in Galicia, folets in Catalonia, trasgas in Asturias, menutos or mendos in Valle de Hecho, and I hope I didn't butcher any of those, and if I did, I'm so sorry, I tried. In November of 2009, Greg Warner and his team reported on and supplied photographs of a giant snake near the jungle city of Iquitos in Peru. So the photograph showed a trail at least 5 meters wide, and they also provided video evidence to support their photos and eyewitness accounts. It's believed to be a yakumama, which is an enormous serpent believed to be the mother of all aquatic animals. According to legends, the yakumama would suck up any living thing that passed within 100 steps of it. So to protect themselves, the local indigenous folks would blow on a conch horn before entering the water. Why? Well, they believed that the yakumama would reveal itself if it was present if they did that. So in the human settlement, 24 de Mayo, the dwellers got into a panic when they saw that on the enormous swamp located at the back part of the settlement, a huge silhouette of dragged grass and mud was visible, attributing the event to the sakamama, although other folks thought it was a gigantic boa. So one eyewitness claimed it started to move like this, circulate until it found a way out over there, and then you cannot say there was a channel over there because everything was plain. As you can see, it was plain. All this is a trail that it made. It wanted to get out that way, but then turned over there, it turned over this way, it took all this. So if you keep walking that way, you can see this, it remained like this. I know, a little confusing, but still, this is evidence that the black boa, the yakumama, the sakamama, the minokau are one and the same in terms of cryptid classification, because all modern description and photographic evidence kind of points to this conclusion. Strikingly tall skeletons uncovered in the Ecuador and Peru Amazon region are undergoing examination in Germany, according to a research team headed by British anthropologist Russell Dement. Well, since 2013, the team has reported finding half a dozen human skeletons dating to the early 1400s and the mid-1500s that measure between 7 to 8 feet in height. In late 2013, Dement received word that a skeleton had been uncovered by a Shuar local, approximately 70 miles from Cuenca, in the Loja province in Ecuador. So Dement traveled to the site and recovered the rib cage and the skull of a female which had been exposed by flooding. And the bones dated back like 600 years. So then they found the rest of the skeleton, and once assembled, it was about 7'4" in height. So this prompted the formation of a research team, including 4 researchers from the Freie University in Germany and the assistance of locals. So recognizing it as a controversial area of research, Dement noted, even though I had been working with that university for many years, I was concerned that they might not give a grant for someone looking for giants. Because he's like, to outsiders, especially scientists, I understand this sounds a little harebrained. And because of the sensational nature of this, he had to be extremely diligent in research because, well, there's going to be skeptics. 3 skeletons that were complete and 2 partials that had no disfiguration and were relatively healthy were all found. Now these burials were elaborate. These bodies were wrapped in leaves, buried in thick clay, which helped to seal the skeletons and protect them against water intrusion. So everything was in fairly good condition. Dement had previously studied Amazonian indigenous communities for more than 2 decades, and he had heard the legends of the very tall, pale-skinned people who used to live nearby. Community elders described them to Dement as a race of large, peaceful Amazonians who were welcomed by the indigenous folks. However, the locals also believed that these people belonged to the spirit world and were very mythical. And in 2002, during an expedition to the coal mines in La Guarija, launched by the University of Florida and Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute, large thoracic vertebrae and ribs were unearthed by the students Jonathan Block and Carlos Jaramillo. So more fossils were unearthed over the course of the expedition, eventually adding up to like 186 fossils from 30 individuals. And this expedition lasted until 2004. During which the fossils of titanoboas were mistakenly labeled as those of crocodiles. Well, in 2009, Mike Warner, a retired lithographer from Lisbon, poured his life savings into a search for the giant snake. First he commissioned satellite imagery, and then there was the 2-week expedition to the Amazon rivers. He was accompanied by his son Greg, and they traveled there to try and capture evidence of the titanoboa. They had a whole team, they were doing aerial surveys and everything. Well, after 12 days in the jungle, hazardous weather conditions, hundreds of still photographs, and hours of video, these guys found a photo of a titanoboa. This thing was 40 meters long and 2 meters wide. Sure, there's been some debate about just how large a modern snake can grow, but evidence is pointing to the big snake of legend. And hey, Mike and his son were like, we're gonna come back, we're gonna do more. And I'm like, okay, good luck folks, not for me.